All right, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your host Ben, and I'm the only host. This is a long form review video of Week 6 in the EPL, and again, I kind of feel like this is a case where the platform kind of works because something like 8 games happened on at the same time. I guess Saturday was a little hectic, so it was hard. It was easy to kind of miss a lot of things, and hopefully, I think next week it gets back to a little normal of a time stretch. But anyways, we have a lot to talk about. Probably I will lead off with the Tottenham and Liverpool game because, well, if you followed any of that, you'll understand why. I'll get into a lot of that in the VAR to everything. Uh, but before I get started, one thing I do want to add is in every video, in kind of the description link, I do hyperlink where each game begins and ends. So no, if you're only interested in hearing about like one game, there's a way for you guys to kind of do that. I know sometimes I do like 3 hour shows, and I don't really try to do that. Sometimes I just kind of get a little carried away. But that way you can only just hear one game if you want to do that. But anyways, get started. I will start with Tottenham and Liverpool. The goal in events, you have the red card with Curtis Jones, and then Luis Diaz gets his goal, and then it is unfairly ruled out, and we'll get to why. And then look a little right after that, Tottenham get the first goal with Son. Liverpool playing with 10 men at this point. And then right before halftime, Cody Gakpo levels it at 1-1. But Gakpo gets hurt, and that ends up kind of costing Liverpool as well. Not just for this game, maybe for a few weeks. It could have been a lot worse than apparently it's been reported. It's not nearly as bad as it could have been. I guess I can say that. But that forced Klopp to make some changes. It forced Klopp to bring on Jota, and that ended up not working out because Jota ended up getting 2 yellows real quickly in the second half. So Liverpool played this game with 9 men for the final 30 minutes or so in the game, and it looked like they were about to scrap out a heroic point, and then Matip had the own goal. And so it was just this was a big one going into it, to be honest, because Liverpool have actually gotten the better of Spurs a lot of late, including the Champions League final a few years ago, and it capped off really what happened last season when it looked like Liverpool started off with that 2-goal lead early on last year, last May or so, or April. And then Spurs were able to scrap back in it. Richarlison looked like he had tied the game 3-3, and then Jota was able to get a last-minute winner at the very end. And maybe what comes around goes around, essentially, because or what goes around comes around, because Jota ended up kind of getting on the stick this go around. This was an insane game. To get started with the lineup. There wasn't much change. We did see Cody Gakpo start over Darwin Núñez. That was a little bit of a surprise, but it turned out that Núñez was kind of dealing with something that Klopp ended up speaking about towards the end. Trent Alexander-Arnold was back fit, but he only fit enough for the bench. But honestly, like looking at this, I was a little worried that this would finally be the game that would show Alexis at DM versus Basuma and Sar. I figured that would maybe be where Spurs could actually win the game a little bit. Maybe they'd be able to pitch the ball off him. Maybe they'd be able to force a bad pass. And I kind of figured the game was going to go that way, and we didn't really see that. But then again, the game completely changed with the red card. And then Tottenham kind of ran with the same lineup that they'd been doing with one change. Richarlison got a start over Brennan Johnson because Johnson wasn't able to go. And that ended up working out for Spurs because Richarlison was surprisingly amazing on that left side. To be honest, I'll be surprised if we don't see that more often. Sometimes we've seen Richarlison kind of play at a striker with Son on the left wing, and I really liked what Richarlison had to offer on that wing side. But I mean, we'll just see if what the plan is. But anyways, it got started really early. I was texting my group soccer mates that the way that this was starting off, it looks like this is going to be like one of those classic open-ended really fun games. And again, just the with the first 20 minutes, that definitely kind of played out, and then obviously it got cagey after the red. But there's an early chance for Liverpool here where Diaz is found by Salah, and it's an early warning, I think, for Spurs. How good Salah was going to be at picking out Luis Diaz making runs into the box, and the shot is just blocked at the last second. So good defending, last minute defending here, but it wasn't warning. And then Tottenham got a chance to kind of do the same thing with a Richarlison cross, and again they show their danger here as well. It's a really good play by Basuma and Sarr to play through Liverpool pressing them to get the ball to Madison, and then Madison finds Richarlison, and Richarlison does well here to get a foot down and drive to the byline and whip in a dangerous ball that flashes by Allison's goal. Just that Kulishevsky doesn't recognize this, and Robertson is actually lucky that Kulishevsky doesn't try to make a run and to again, if Kulishevsky recognizes this early, this is probably a tap in. But it's an early warning sign that Richarlison fancied himself taking on Joe Gomez 1v1 and getting to the byline, getting across it, and that we ended up seeing that for the goal. Then I've got a chance for Liverpool in the 18th minute. Gakpo, then Robinson, also Vicario double save. I want to touch on this because it's a really good switch by Slobosai. It's a long ball that finds Luis Diaz. So it's a long ball here, and then that crosses the field, and then Luis Diaz passes it back to Robinson, who quickly finds Gakpo in the box, and Gakpo's shot is saved, and then Robinson's follow-up is blocked too. And then there's a chance where it looks like maybe Gakpo was played in, but Van de Ven actually beats him into a sprint, so that was a good play by Van de Ven. And I've got to note that the Salah Gomez and Slobosai combination play on that right side was doing really, really well. And it looks like, because Gomez was making some pretty good runs to get on the wing side, and Udogie was actually having a really, really tough time at it. And then we get to the thing that changed the entire game with the red card. And I kind of feel like I don't want to necessarily come off as, I want to say, a hypocrite, because last week I did kind of justify what happened with Malo Gusto, and it's kind of the same thing here. It's high. The ball, the intention's not really there, and he gets the ball, but Malo Gusto got the ball too. The only thing I guess I could say is Curtis Jones isn't necessarily out of control here, where he doesn't necessarily go to ground. He doesn't leave his feet. He's just stretching, where Malo Gusto did go to the ground with his foot up. But both got the ball. But again, whether or not Curtis Jones meant it or not, and he is unlucky that his foot rolls over the ball. One thing you can say is it is a dangerous play because the way how high his foot is and his studs are showing, and it goes into Basuma's ankle, and it could have been ugly. So I get the game wants to get that out. It does suck, and it did change the game. It's now a 3-match ban for Curtis Jones, and the one thing I will say here is I didn't like the way they did replay. It's one thing to recommend for the ref to go take a second look. That's fine. But the way that the VAR had the video review person basically had it freeze framed, where you saw Curtis Jones basically going into Basuma with his ankle high up, and you didn't see any of the ball, any of him his foot rolling over the ball before that. I thought that was messed up. I thought that was a little nefarious. And that stadium has been a little bit of a curse for Liverpool. Andy Robinson got a red card in a lame fashion a couple seasons ago, and a little controversy. They didn't lose that game. They were able to draw that one as well. And then we get to the goal. So Liverpool playing down a man, and they still find a way to get a goal. And what a ball this is from Mo Salah. And the touch and finish by Diaz is first class too. I mean, Salah, this comes from a throw in. Salah is able to hold off Van de Ven all on his own. He collects the ball from a throw in, and then he sees Diaz like making a run behind everyone, and he's able to thread him in, and he's onside. And I even had a note here that they're cheating. It's very clearly not offside. I mean, no lines are drawn during any of this either. That was kind of weird. And play immediately restarts with Spurs having a free kick. And it's come out that the Professional Game Match Officials Limited, so the PGMOL, which everyone's gotten to find out what that acronym means now, they issued a statement immediately after the game saying, "Whoops," essentially. And I was fuming after that. Apparently, the VAR and ref assistant failed to communicate what they were reviewing. The call they issued to the ref was basically check complete, thinking that the goal would stand. And taking the on-field call was goal to begin with when it had been offsides. And there's From where they say check complete, it's maybe, I don't know, 8 seconds when the game actually restarts. So I think that was way too quick to do that. Uh, and yeah, heads do need to roll for this. They've now since issued the video of what happened, and that makes things honestly even worse. To be honest, it's not you see that it's not done nefariously. You see that there's a bit of incompetence in some of this, but also it's overly complicated. And one thing I want to say is NBC, I guess a couple of weeks ago, actually put there was some kind of like 30-minute video featuring Howard Webb, and he actually went over and discussed like, maybe 5 incidents that happened in the first few weeks of the season. And that's actually a pretty good video to watch because you see in real time how this is operating, and they have at any point in time you have a ref that has basically 5 people screaming in his ear on what is going on, and it's so often you never hear unanimous opinions. You always hear someone kind of, trying to argue their own thing. And usually the only reason when they actually do kind of, change a call on the field is when all 5 or 6 are agreeing. So that obviously isn't necessarily the best way to run things. But another thing too is obviously the communication is a problem. Um, I mean, and here you see how they didn't know what they were even reviewing. The ref just heard check complete, and so he restarted the game. Uh, and even in the video that was released yesterday, you heard someone actually shouting, "No, stop the game! A goal should be rewarded." And they were like, "There's nothing we can do. The game's already restarted." So it's not, and I don't think it's the first time that obviously people have been critical of VAR, but to me, it's like the first time there's been a little momentum that maybe something should change. And I'm not going to be one of those people that screams VAR should go away because we've already seen already that these refs or whatever can't handle just doing a game by themselves or just doing a game with help with replay help, assisted help. Why do you think they're going to do better doing games themselves? No, VAR has definitely come in and at least had some kind of positive in that respect. Obviously, it's not perfect. I just think the another reason is they've made the game kind of weird. I mean, put intent back into handball. That's not hard to do. And then for offsides, if it's not naked, it's not clear to the naked eye. Someone is onside. You'd give any kind of doubt. Give that advantage to the attacker. I feel like that's pretty simple. Or wait for AI offsides, like they have in the World Cup, they have in the Champions League, and I feel like it's surprising the Premier League hasn't gone to that. Uh, but yeah, it's obviously an issue, and I don't know. I mean that goal really did change the game. Liverpool get a goal lead, they're able to kind of change things up a little bit. And I mean, yeah, that was a massive, massive call, and obviously, Liverpool's club and supporters are right to be upset about that. And then not only that, not only that, the goal ruled out. Spurs are able to go ahead, minutes following, and it is a fantastic Spurs goal. But obviously, it's not easy to rebound from that. Liverpool players probably felt hard done by, and rightly so. But I hear. They get the goal from Son, and it's Richarlison assist, and it's a great through ball by Madison. I mean, Slabberschlei here tries to get past Basuma. It does a little too much. Basuma wins that duel. Then Poro is playing kind of in midfield, and he wins a 50-50 duel versus Alexis McAllister. And then Spurs find Madison on the ball, and he threads in a perfect pass, slip pass to find Richarlison, getting behind Joe Gomez. And then Richarlison plays the square pass for Son to tap in. And again, it's great play by Richarlison and Son, but this starts with Basuma kind of winning that duel over Slabberschlei. And then there's a chance for Tottenham to take the lead, and Richarlison strikes a post. And again, I thought Richarlison was spectacular in this game, playing on the left wing side, and he just there's a little chaos there, and he's able to get on the end of the ball, and his shot does everything right. It just kisses off the post, and then Gakpo ended up scoring, but he gets injured on the play, and right before this, it looked like maybe Gakpo had a chance to actually make a run in behind, and Udogie goes in from behind and catches his ankle, and maybe that twisted his knee a little bit. I was amazed that wasn't looked at for a dangerous play. I don't even know if he was given a yellow card for that. But here Liverpool are able to get their bodies forward. Szoboszlai again whips in a very good ball that finds Virgil van Dijk in the area. So he heads it to Gakpo in the penalty area, and Gakpo is able to turn and get a shot away, but immediately grabs hold of his leg afterwards, and it's turned out that it is a bit of a knee issue. Though again, could have been a lot worse because you think back to what happened last year with Jota, with Luis Diaz having ACL things that happened. You had the fear that maybe it was going to be another one of those, and it looks like maybe they've gotten lucky, and he's only going to miss maybe to the end of the international break. So maybe they'll even get him by the end of the month. So that's definitely that was hard in a moment kind of moment, and it's unfortunate too because he was starting to actually really turn it on. I've kind of been critical of Gakpo in a few games. Obviously, great goal here, and he had a fantastic goal versus Leicester in the Carabao Cup in the midweek. And then here he had another chance where Salah was absolutely incredible, even down a man, and as Salah does everything right here. I think Luis Diaz does everything right too. It's just kind of unlucky. But Salah plays a worldie of a pass to Luis Diaz, who just can't get his feet right, and the chance goes begging. Salah was just having fun, kind of getting the ball, tormenting any kind of fullback. I think he's on the left side of the field here, and he was able to find people making runs in behind, and he had just a perfect delivery. Just the chance creation was next level, and unfortunately, just weren't able to take advantage of that. The thing that was interesting though was Spurs weren't really taking advantage of the man advantage. I was expecting Spurs to basically overlap Liverpool to death on the wings, and instead they were just trying to crowd everything in midfield, and Liverpool didn't really care about that until they got kind of near the near Liverpool's penalty area, and then from there it was kind of they were trying to do just a lot of weird crosses, and that was to Liverpool's advantage too. High crosses. I would have tried to drive a lot of things as low as possible, which that's actually ended up how they ended up winning. But here in the second half, we have a couple chances, first from Madison and then Son. And again, the only reason why this was even a game was because Allison was Herculean again. And it starts here with just an incredible Allison save. The note I have here is it's funny how there are just some players you don't want the other team to pass the ball to. You just recognize it as this an opposing fan. And I'm watching this. They have the ball with Romero. I'm like, I don't really care. The Kulusevski gets the ball kind of near the sideline, no problem. And then Romero finds Madison, and I'm just screaming. I screamed out loud and yelled, uttered "F me." And then Madison just takes a touch and then tries to FIFA Allison essentially. He tries to curl it into the corner. And again, if Allison's just historically great at shot stopping, against other keepers, maybe this is a goal and maybe this kills off the game. And then this save was just as good. A couple minutes later, it's on with a chance, and again, it's Madison. Madison gets the ball near the penalty area, and instead of trying to do any kind of shot this time, he slips in something clever to Udogie. Udogie gets the ball in the penalty area and flicks something towards Son's way, and Son does a really good job to collect this off his chest, and then he has a fire cannon of a volley. And again, I just don't get how Allison is strong enough to keep this out, but he was. But a couple of notes here that I thought it was interesting how Spurs were playing their fullbacks. And again, just the way you watched Udogie and Pedro Porro were inverted and basically outnumbering Liverpool in midfield, but Liverpool already were down a man, and Liverpool didn't really care about the midfield area. It was elsewhere, and really the areas that Robinson was struggling maybe defending, or Gomez, what were the wide areas, and it was just very weird how Spurs took forever to kind of figure that out. And then we get the 68th minute, completely changed the game. It looked like Liverpool actually were in this, playing down a man. And then they had to go to 9 players after Jota picked up two yellow cards. I think the first yellow wasn't even a yellow, but the second one, you're already on a shaky yellow. You can't go to the way that Jota does, so I can't really complain about that. It's interesting to see what Klopp did. He basically went to a 3-5. Kind of shape, no strikers. I think Szoboszlai was kind of the striker. The one note I did have here also was Jota's positioning, I thought was a little strange. So Klopp, Gakpo's injury forced a second half change, and I think everyone was expecting Nunes, but apparently, he wasn't fully healthy. So Jota coming on made sense, but it was interesting to see Klopp shift Salah centrally as kind of the lead attacker, and basically they went with a 4-4-1, which they've done in other games. But it was interesting to see Jota played out wide, uh, and Saka has that breakaway pace and better holding onto the ball. I think than Jota. But Saka was also cooking, Udogi for fun, and Liverpool being able to kind of create that way. It ended up going away. Obviously, when you play on the wing side, you got to do more defensively as well. Maybe that's why Jota was picked. I can't say, but it didn't necessarily work out. And obviously, Jota lost the ball a couple of times. His head got the best of him, and sent himself off. And no Gakpo next week for Brighton. Brighton's not going to be an easy team to beat. Brighton just got kind of embarrassed, so they're going to be upset about that as well. And no Jota now. That's going to be something to look at because Nunes wasn't able to go this game. So is Nunes kind of nursing? There's talk that Nunes was nursing some tightness. So will he be able to go versus Brighton next week? That'll be a bit of a story to follow as well. And then Liverpool lose the game at the very last minute. And a note I have here is Gravenberch has the ball. He's since come on. So is Endo, and Gravenberch has the ball kind of near the Spurs kind of penalty area, and instead of maybe going to the sideline, trying to buy a throw in, corner kick, foul, whatever, he could have kicked it out of bounds, given Spurs a throw in. Anything works except losing the ball, and he loses the ball, and allows Spurs to quickly counter. And that's basically best what they do. Kulusevski then gets the ball and he cuts inside, or Kulusevski had been getting the ball the entire second half, and he'd been cutting inside the every single time, and whipping crosses, curving the ball basically towards the goal. And Robinson was actually kind of eating his lunch, and this was the one time when they actually played Pedro Porro occupying space outside of Robinson. So he gets the ball. Christian Romero kind of sees it, plays in Pedro Porro. Robinson tries to get out there and cut this off, but he's late by just a second. And then Porro whips in just kind of a boring ball, cutting away from Allison's goal, with his right foot. And Matip, with his tired legs, the ball is behind him, and he tries to block it, and instead lets it into his own net. I mean, the surprising thing to me was why maybe didn't Konate start this game and maybe bring Matip on as a sub? Maybe, because I do think his tired legs, caused this. And it's such a drag because Matip honestly played errorless ball aside from this, and it's so close to clenching a heroic point, and they come away with nothing. But truly the most cursed and cruel game I think I've had stake in, and it's a drag, not just for Liverpool fans. I think Spurs fans are only going to hear about this, not really hear about how good they've been this far in the season. They're second in the league because of that result, and it's another fantastic start to their season with Madison and Son looking the way they are. But I feel like it was a drag for the neutral. No one wants to see just a team having to play in a block, because you're down a man, especially when two teams were willing to go for this. This was going to be an open ended. Both teams were pressing as hell. Both teams would have tried to play out of a press. This would have been a fun back to back kind of game, and we didn't get any of that. So I thought that was a little disappointing. Allison had 8 saves. This could have been done a lot earlier than it was. Liverpool had 12 shots and 4 on target, though. To be fair, I mean, to get started with Spurs, Madison is an incredible player, and there was talks that maybe he wasn't even going to be able to go, and it looked like he was kind of playing, not even full health, but just man, his movement in the box is elite, and he's quite good. The way he was able to just kind of pick out when someone is making a timed run and actually be able to thread it. That was happening over and over again and again. Anytime in the second half he got the ball, he was able to get touches on the ball. It freaked me out. And Richarlison had a good game. It's worth saying as well. Pedro Porro, not just he was able to get the game winning cross. Him playing in midfield, he was able to win a couple duels, get the ball off McAllister. He had a pretty good game. Everyone's been talking about Udogi in a lot of these. It was Porro that kind of shined in this one. And Son kept making pretty good runs into the box as well. And it seems, Virgil van Dijk and Matip, they were fine when, Spurs were trying to cross stuff in the air. It was when stuff was played hard on the ground recognizing Son had timing a run, that was when the danger that was when Spurs were causing the most danger. Thankfully, they didn't do it enough, but they did enough to win. Uh, but I mean, yeah, lost in all this. Spurs won the game and basically, they passed Liverpool on points now. And it's basically a week after everyone was kind of saying, Liverpool and City for another title race. And I don't really know what to make of Spurs, but I will say this: as long as they have Madison playing for them, they have a shot to beat anyone they play. Liverpool, City, anyone. He's too good in the final third, and so many of these games these days come down to teams not being able to figure out how to beat a team's kind of sitting in against them. Madison can unlock boxes. He's as good as there is now in the league. I'm not going to Kevin De Bruyne. People will think of him as well, but Madison is up there. Criminally underrated for the longest time when he was at Leicester. He's come to Spurs. He's had a fantastic start to the season, and obviously it's continued. Uh, and then with Liverpool, I'm gonna not try to seem like a sore loser. I will say this: it's incredible how they looked down a man, playing with 10 men. Salah, especially the balls he was hitting and finding Diaz, he looked unplayable. Even when Liverpool were playing down a man, his hold of play, dribbling out of trouble, all of it was really good. I thought Robinson put in a fantastic shift. It's unfortunate the goal finally came down his side. But Kulusevski, he had locked him up all game. Most of the Spurs' danger, for the most part, was coming down Richarlison and Gomez's side, not really Robinson. And you saw Robinson getting the ball sometimes and carrying it, being able to escape pressure and actually push Liverpool, forward high up the pitch. I don't know how Robinson still had legs at the end of the game. That was impressive to me. I've kind of been on Robinson's side a little bit. And he started off he had a really fantastic start to his season, to be fair to him. And this is a really good Spurs side. And Liverpool, I think, did enough to not only win the game, win the game being down a man. I think they did enough to win a point just playing with 9 men for 30 minutes. So that was obviously Allison being an all timer. I think helps. And it's worth saying that as well. And one kind of note I had was this game would be a lot easier to kind of stomach if Allison had just been less great at making saves. If that Madison or Son chance goes in, Matip's own goal doesn't really hurt as much. Is worth kind of saying that as well. Some negatives were, Dorian had a knock, and that ended up kind of costing. That's why he wasn't able to feature, and that makes the Gakpo injury that much more meaningful. But again, regardless of the result, this was one of the more heroic performances I think I've seen from any team ever. And sometimes you just have one of those days where just nothing goes your way, and not just the ref decisions. The Gakpo injury changed the game. No, because no Jota in the second half, no yellows. The Matip own goal, as well, and just everything was just like the way it ended was so cool. The entire game, it was kind of like a troll, essentially. And no one likes a sore loser, but it's hard for me not to complain a little bit about the refs, and not just the head ref. I think I'm more upset at the man doing VAR, because again, Jones red. It was originally called a yellow. The goal ruled out for offsides. You can't really tell. You can't tell me or you can't really tell if he's off or on. Yeah, the first yellow wasn't really a yellow. So, and they have issued out an apology, but again, that's for people that have been like, oh, what more do you want? There needs to be. I'm not going to say they need to necessarily change how they're doing VAR. Oh, I guess I could say that you don't need to have 6 people, talking all at the same time. It's confusing. I think they actually have changed. To be honest, though, they mentioned something during the Brentford game that some of the commentators were hearing what check was being completed. So they've apparently emphasized what the call on the field has been. They've been repeating it. I mean, it's small potatoes, but I mean, had that been in place, that the what happened on Saturday wouldn't have happened. So that is something. Uh, I mean, I did have a little critique, a little bit of Klopp. It's kind of harsh to say that, but I was surprised that Nunes didn't come on. And now that we know that he was dealing with something, that makes a little bit more sense. I mean, the Gravenberch and Endo came coming on to just kind of relieve some pressure and relieve some legs that were running in the midfield. Yeah, that maybe is understandable, but Endo can't track down the ball carrier. And after Gravenberch loses it, and that's basically what led to the goal. So that was kind of unfortunate. But no, that was an amazing, impressive performance. And again, given the way how they've handled so many situations already, This is the third game they've had to play down a man. It's hard not to say that there might be something special brewing here. Anyways, I'll move on to Man City and Wolves, and this one had a little surprise of its own as well. I got started with Ruben Diaz having an own goal. Fantastic play by Neto. Neto's been kind of Wolves player of the season this entire season, and he made a stamp on that. And then Alvarez was able to get one back, level it at 1-1 with a great free kick goal. And at that point, you kind of wonder, okay, this is maybe where City's going to actually win this in the end. And no, Wang was able to get the second with an incredible. This is a really good team goal by Wolves here, and City kind of made a mess defensively, which I'll get to. But it's not been the best week for Man City and Pep, and they've got Arsenal coming up on Saturday, and they're going to have Arsenal without Rodri. First two games without Rodri haven't been that great. We'll see how Man City do in the Champions League today, but this is coming the back of losing to Newcastle in the midweek, where Pep opted to sit Haaland all game, and playing him in this game didn't necessarily work out either because Haaland maybe had his worst performance as a Man City player. I think he had one shot throughout the entire game. Not really necessarily Haaland's fault, just Wolves did a really good job defending him. Craig Dawson was unbelievable. But I mean, the news was a little surprising. We saw Ake played over Gvardiol. That ended up kind of backfiring because Neto destroyed Ake's for lunch. Kovacic was tried instead of as basically the Rodri replacement, not Calvin Phillips. That was a little surprising. Calvin Phillips did play versus Newcastle. I guess that didn't necessarily go too well to Pep's liking. So that was a surprise, and it didn't really work. That was a big issue. As you saw the game play out, Foden and Alvarez were a little redundant. City did not really have any kind of threat on the right side. It was basically Walker, and that was hurting them as well. And then Wolves changed to a back three, and that is kind of what won them in the game. So Max Gilman, Craig Dawson, and we saw Tati Gomez come into the side. Gomez hasn't really necessarily started in a bunch of these games, and he was good. That back three was very, very connected, and it allowed Semedo and Ait-Nouri to kind of do what they do best. It's harder when you're a fullback to also do defensive work. You got to make sure handle winger coming at you. But also, Semedo and Ait-Nouri like to go forward. It's easier when you're a wing back and you've got a little more cover. And we see that. We actually see that for the goal with Semedo. To get started with the early chance, this is where one thing where, an early goal changes an entire game, and Man City almost got an early goal. It's a lovely ball by Ruben Diaz, just a lovely ball over the top that finds Matheus Nunes. He's trying to square this ball in the 6-yard area to Haaland, but Craig Dawson reads it, and it gets the ball first to deny Haaland. That goes in. Maybe this entire thing changes. And then Wolves get the early goal, and it is a Ruben Diaz own goal. Kovacic has the ball, and Foden runs in front of him, and that causes a loose ball. Foden then basically is pushed off the ball by Neto. So Foden could do better here. And then Neto decides to sprint basically the next 60 yards with the ball, carrying it upfield, taking on Nathan Ake. Beats Nathan Ake too. Ake goes to ground and misses. And from there, Neto gets to the byline. He's looking to maybe cross something in, and he tries to, the cross deflects off Ruben Diaz to go past Ederson. And it's disastrous by Foden and Nathan Ake here. And you can also, one note I have is you can see Ruben Diaz kind of holding his arms back before he tries to block this. And it's possible that kind of sent him off balance to where that's where this goal kind of happened too. Maybe he's able to get a better kick on the ball without that, but he's so focused on not doing a cheap handball. So I think it's actually a good play by Ruben Diaz. To be honest, I think it's just really unlucky how this happens because basically that deflection picked it over Ederson because Ederson's probably getting to this as well. But unlucky or not, it was an amazing play, but by Neto, and basically, that was anytime Wolves didn't have a lot of chances, but they had a lot of danger moments, and it was really anytime they were able to win the ball off City, they were using him as an outlet, and it was working really well. Another note I had was the way they were using Matheus Cunha was interesting. Sometimes when you play with a striker, you expect him to kind of be the forward outlet, him to be the one kind of making runs to get behind center backs. Instead, they were really using him almost like like another an additional midfielder, and basically someone to be really really good out of possession. And some of the tackling he was doing to win the ball back was huge. There were a couple of times when it looked like maybe Foden or Alvarez was going to, or even Kovacic was going to get the ball on the turn, and there would be space for them to operate in. And he was coming back and timing some really clever tackles from behind to win the ball back, and that was leading them to get to get some breaks. Right before the first half ended, there was actually a chance where Wang was able to get on a breakaway. They were able to break quickly, and Wang was able to cut inside. He was able to get Kyle Walker to go to the ground, and then before he was able to get his shot, it was blocked at the last second. But there was you saw the danger. You saw again, Wolves didn't necessarily have a lot of shots, and Man City had outshot them 11 to maybe 1 in that first half. But Wolves had a lot of danger moments where they were close to being able to get some shots off, and it seemed like they were the moments that they had seemed to be more dangerous than what City had. City had 11 shots, but you never really saw Jose Sa being troubled necessarily. And Wolves center backs were doing a fantastic job on Holland, and they weren't outnumbered in midfield because of the way the running and work rate that Mateus Cunha was doing tracking back. So it's not easy to play this way. You've got because Mateus Cunha has to do a lot of running without the ball, and then when Wolves were getting it back, everything was you have to sprint. You have to immediately strike and strike quickly to go from attack to or to go from defense into attack, and that's not easy to transition either. And Wolves are just doing that over and over again. And this was also I really liked how physical Wolves were being. Sometimes teams just lay off City, watch them play their pretty football, get their 600 passes without laying a glove on them. And Wolves didn't go into that. So whether they decided to do that themselves or Gary Neville or Gary O'Neill told them to play that way, I kind of figure it was O'Neill. So the game plan was quite simple, but it's not easy to pull off, and they did pull it off. Uh, but we get to the second half, and there is finally a chance for Holland. It was interesting to see Pep change, took Mateus Nunes off. The crowd was kind of getting at him. I didn't actually think he was necessarily the problem. I didn't think he was having a bad game, but the crowd was really kind of booing him anytime he got on the ball. It was his homecoming. He was a Wolves player last season, and they brought in Oscar Bob. I thought Oscar Bob was a little bit more of an attacking player, and he was kind of being played next to Kovacic. I didn't necessarily think that worked out, but we did see a chance here. Oscar Bob was able to find Holland into the box, and Holland just can't get the contact he wants. Any kind of contact, this is probably a goal. Uh, but I was a little bit surprised with that because one thing that you saw as the game went on, it was City had no way to attack down the right side because Foden wasn't interested in attacking down the right side. Wolves had that side covered with Aït-Nouri and Gomez. And so here, but City are able to get back into the game with a fantastic free kick by Julian Alvarez, and he's been getting close to these in the last couple of games. He had one strike off the post versus West Ham, if you don't recall, and he forced a really good save last week versus Nottingham Forest, and this is in the top drawer as well. And then we have a Wolves chance and then a City chance. So Akanji or likely saves a goal here. Ake is burned by Neto again, and Akanji, is low key maybe one of the note I had here was maybe he's one of City's like second best defenders. Just kind of defending, obviously not with the ball. Diaz is first. You maybe Gvardiol, but just as far as defending, I do think Akanji is maybe better than Stones, though Akanji ended up making a mistake later in the game. But it's fantastic here. I think he saves a goal. And then there's a City chance where Dawson clears one off the line. It's just kind of a ball sent in. It creates a little chaos. And it nearly goes past everyone to go in, but Dawson's there to clean the danger. And then Wolves get the second goal to go ahead. And this is brilliant by Mateus Cunha here. The goal is well worked as well. Max Kilman recognizes the space that City are giving him. So he carries the ball and then picks out Nelson Semedo, who's making a run up the wing here and plays in the ball. And Semedo is surprisingly all alone. And I think it's because Ake has basically come here and he's asked for help on Pedro Neto. Because you see Ake is focused more on Neto, and he's brought Kyle Walker to this side at this point. Kyle Walker has shifted over here, and again, but it leaves Semedo open. He gets the ball and he sprints and he's able to get the cross in before Ake is able to close off him. The cross is deflected, but that's what causes the chaos. Akanji has a weird head decision to head the ball into the ground. I talked him up just a couple seconds ago, but failed here. He's worried about Mateus Cunha making a run into the box, but he heads it basically to Wang, and Wang tries a shot. It's blocked by Ruben Diaz, but the rebound falls to Mateus Cunha. And from there, instead of trying like a quick turn or shot, he does a very clever layoff to Wang, just kind of next to him, and Wang finishes the chance. So many times you do see players in this situation, they try to take it on themselves, and this is amazing composure by Cunha to recognize Wang's got a better chance to finish this, and he does a really good job to get him the pass, a nice little touch to find Wang. And another thing that's worth saying is if Mateus Cunha doesn't sprint to be an option for Semedo when that cross happens, I don't think Akanji does the clearance that he has. So I think that kind of created Akanji to do the screw up. So it's very good by Nelson Semedo to make that run in the beginning. It's good by Kilman, and it's really good by Mateus Cunha. And then Wang's able to finish the chance. You need to have someone to actually put things away, and Wang's able to do that. And I think Wang's actually been their leading goal scorer. It's kind of I've talked about Neto in a couple of these games. Anytime I've done Wolves, I've talked about Mateus Cunha. I haven't talked much about Wang. So maybe it's time I do that. So there we go. And again, finally, Pep ended up switching up towards a little bit at the end. He took Ake off, brought Grealish on, moved Doku to right wing. Grealish was the left wing, and you had Foden and Alvarez kind of playmaking in the middle. And I was surprised we didn't see that more, because that actually allowed Foden and Alvarez to play in the middle without being vulnerable, or without while also still having some kind of threat on the wings to take a fullback on, or to get a cross off, because that just wasn't happening. And I was surprised we didn't necessarily we didn't see it till late, and that was kind of the change. But Man City's midfield to end this game was Calvin Phillips, it was Oscar Bob, and it was Alvarez. Essentially, it's not quite Kevin De Bruyne, Rodri, Gundogan, and Bernardo Silva like we've seen in the past, and that ended up kind of reflecting a little bit here too. I mean, Wolves did a very good job here. It starts with basically lining up in that back three, because you're able to stop what Holland wanted to do. Man City had 23 shots and 8 on target, but there's only a .87 xG. Holland had 1 shot all game. Craig Dawson, maybe the Holland whisperer, essentially. Wolves had 3 shots and only 1 on target. They scored 2 goals. The own goal helped with that. But I liked how Wolves set this up. They switched to a back three to handle Holland. They had Mateus Cunha to be a number in midfield rather than be an outlet over the top, and they used the 2 wide players to be their outlets. And they still had defensive cover in the back line they had defensive cover in midfield in front of the back line with Gomez and Lamena, who were really good at denying Foden and Alvarez the spaces they wanted to get the ball and turn on. And with Man City, it felt Foden and Alvarez, I thought, were a little redundant. They just wanted to get the ball to turn in the half spaces, and there's no width in the side. And 2 games without Rodri, 2 defeats already. And with Wolves, Neto has his pace again. That has become a big development, not just for Wolves or Neto, just in general for people looking at who they can maybe target for transfers again. But because before Neto had his really bad injury, he was up there as one of the more exciting kind of young kind of wide players in the league. He had an amazing little purple patch. It was during the bubble, so maybe people didn't necessarily rate it. But they should rate it now. He's been good to start the season. Mateus Cunha's work rate was incredible, and Craig Dawson did a really good job to mark Holland and kind of stick with him. We haven't really seen teams able to do this, and it's been brilliant. It was brilliant by O'Neill to do this, and I think that he deserved this because we've seen a number of teams try this, but it's one thing to try it, and it's another to be successful with it. To be able to quickly transition on City from a deeper area. It wasn't much different than what we saw Newcastle do last season with Alan St. Maximin. The way they were using Neto and the way they made sure to strike with pace. No dilly-dallying. And it requires a lot of running and sprinting to do this. But usually you don't also see teams really get City to turn the ball over and allow for transition moments like this. And obviously no Rodri gave them a shot and they took it. But They've been playing some good stuff, Wolves, for the this year, and it hasn't really been rewarded. You know, they had a really good first half versus Liverpool, and then that kind of died down. I thought they had a good first half versus Brighton before that onslaught happened in the second half. They played well versus Man United in that game, if you don't recall, like the first game of the season. And even last week, I thought they were really unlucky to unlucky with the red card against them, and unlucky to they had a PK against them with a really shaky handball. So after they were playing down a man, it looked like they maybe done enough to even win that game. So it feels not only they needed this, maybe O'Neal needed this, and whatever the results have been, they don't do this without every single player digging in and listening to what O'Neal wanted. So they obviously believe in the manager still. So that's good to see as well. And then with City, not the best homecoming for Mateus Nunes, no width in the attack on the right side, uh, and no Rodri as well, and. Usually when a team gets one over City, you expect City's actually to kind of be 2 or 3, and it's just kind of one of those days, and it was less than 1. That's not, and you don't really remember Jose Sa having to be tested that much. I was surprised we didn't see Grealish on earlier. It maybe moved Doku to right wing. And I was kind of surprised we saw Ake played over Gvardiol. Maybe Gvardiol saving him for Champions League. Ake's been a good player in a bunch of these games, and we've seen Ake get the better of a lot of wingers in the past. I know he's got Soccer's number, and he had Soccer's number last season. But Neto was able to get his number in this game, and then no Rodri versus Arsenal, but they might have Bernardo Silva and John Stones. I think I saw that they're training again, so that's going to be a big boost for Pep, at least in that respect. And Arsenal might go into the City game not necessarily at full strength either. And we'll get to Arsenal now with Arsenal and Bournemouth. Arsenal do what they needed to do. They win the game, and they win 4-0, but it didn't really feel that kind of scoreline, to be honest. And going into this, it seemed like they were dealing a little bit with an injury crisis as well. Declan Rice, Saka, Martinelli, Trossard, Partey weren't really training in the leading up to this, and then out of nowhere, you saw Declan Rice, you saw Saka in the 11. And another thing that was interesting was in the midweek, Ramsdale had a great game versus Brentford. I think he was actually player of the game. And then again, we saw Raya, and that's turned to be maybe a little bit more of a talking point again because of what happened yesterday, which I'll get to. Um, but I guess with the lineup with Arsenal, we saw Havertz, get a start again. That's it seems Arteta is still trying to figure out between Fabio Vieira and Havertz. So Havertz gets the nod here, and Havertz does score. He gets the a PK, and we saw Nketiah and Jesus again. And yeah, Arsenal weren't really flying at their best, but they did enough. I mean, with Bournemouth, it was interesting. They've started out well in almost any game they played, and they were pressing Arsenal to a couple of mistakes again. And then Arsenal started to use David Raya to kind of punish that. And that's where, at least in this game, or I guess teams pressing them, that's where this really showed up. Is where Arsenal used David Raya almost like an outfield player, and I'll get to that later on. There was an early chance for Arsenal with a Ben White cross, and I want to say this because Raya has the ball and he fakes past it, 2 times, looking towards Ben White. It fools Bournemouth players, and they shift over, and that creates a gap in the middle where Raya just feeds the ball to Zinchenko, and from there, Zinchenko has a free run in the midfield, and he leads the counter. And then Saka gets it, right overlaps, and the cross is blocked off. Uh, and then we have a chance for Bournemouth with Solanke. It's a great recovery tackle by Saliba to block the shot because Solanke looked like he was maybe set to fire from close range. And Arsenal, I think, are fortunate because Havertz has the ball picked off him, but it's a poor pass from Jesus. And just one pass later, Solanke is running with the ball into the penalty area. So that this was a close call. And then there's another Bournemouth chance where it looked like Solanke was in again. But Tavernier plays a poor ball behind everyone. That's going to be a little bit of a theme in this game as well. Arsenal did not have the best start. Odegaard here loses the ball. Ryan Christie then plays a ball that catches Zinchenko out of position. And, Tavernier it gets it. And, he's got options in front of him and just plays a poor pass. And then Arsenal get the first goal. And here, Jesus is fouled. It's a free kick. Arsenal take quickly. And Nketiah then plays a risky ball, but he does a really good job to collect it and turn upfield. Good balance here. And then he finds Saka. And then Saka has a pass to Odegaard, who loops the ball in toward the back post. Gabriel Jesus meets it and heads it off the woodwork, and the bounce falls kindly to Saka right in front of an empty goal, and he finishes it. Max Aarons is lost, trying to mark either Jesus or Havertz, and he marks neither. So Max Aarons didn't necessarily have his best game, and then Arsenal had a chance with Fabio Vieira cross. Uh, wait, Arsenal have a break. Maybe that's not right. And then I have a game note for Bournemouth. Justin Kluivert and Tavernier had been poor with their decision making on breakaway chances, and so we have 40 minutes in. It didn't really feel like a 4-0 game. Oh, I get what I did. That note was from last week, so fail. Uh, so 4 minutes in, it really didn't feel like it was going to be a 4-0 game. They've done enough to win the ball off Arsenal a few times, but there's only been one shot by them. And again, Kluivert and Tavernier just anytime they were able to get the ball in decent areas, it was the final pass that was hurting. And then here is where the game changed, and it's Arsenal get their second goal from Odegaard. It's a PK. Osaka took the PK last week for Spurs, and it was interesting to see how it was Odegaard that took it here. I think Odegaard should be the number one taker. I think I've said that before. I like his technique more. But 41 minutes in, Bournemouth, just have a throw in, and Billing then dribbles it into Zinchenko, lose the ball, and then Zinchenko plays in Nketiah, making a run down the wing, getting past Sabaneri. He's drawn out wide, and then Nketiah slows down, waits for Zinchenko to join him, and then he does a nice, clever give and go, and that's where Nketiah continues to run into the box, and Max Aarons goes to the ground and brings Nketiah down. Max Aarons did not have his best game here, and it's awful to concede this PK. Just basically because you give up the second goal, and it's the second week in a row where you concede right before halftime. So you lose any kind of momentum here, and that's something that Areola is going to have to address. I mean, this isn't really his fault. I mean, Max Aarons has a hard mistake here, but yeah, I mean, because after that, and then there was a chance maybe for Billing. There's a great slide challenge again by Gabriel to block a shot that was close. I could have maybe tested Raya, and it's a great feed by Max Aarons trying to atone a little bit for his error. And to be honest, it didn't feel like Bournemouth had been playing that poor. The final ball was really lacking. They didn't have many shots, but there were two times where Billing and Solanke had chances to maybe test Raya, and Gabriel and Saliba both had incredible blocks to stop that. So really good defending on their end. And then, basically the game gets killed early on with the third goal coming from a PK as well. This one is Havertz this time, and it's a hard decision by Ryan Christie to he just flies into the ground to stop Odegaard trying to try a shot into the box. There's a good pass though found by Saka that finds Odegaard's feet, and Bournemouth have a few chances to clear this ball away before this happens. Nketiah has a great pass that has a great press to force Neto to just clear the ball away, and then from there. From Raya, Arsenal moved the ball all the way upfield using Saka, making a run through the middle. That was interesting. And then Odegaard, hand sits to, and that's basically how Arsenal were able to, get the ball into the area. And then from there, it's a little chaos ball. And Saka finally is able to find Odegaard in the, kind of close to the area. It looks like Odegaard's about to have a shot, and that's where Christie just dives to the ground to stop him no matter what. So it's the right call. And then Odegaard hands it to Havertz, and maybe to get his confidence up. And I think everyone gets second guesses if he misses. I think it's worth kind of saying that. But it worked out because Havertz did score. It was a good PK. And then that pretty much did kill the game. And then there's a chance here maybe for a 4-4 kind of later on in the game when Smith Rowe came on. He drags a shot wide from close, but after Jesus did a really good job to kind of hold on to the ball, he's being fouled by two players and plays Smith Rowe making a good run into the box. So that was good to see. I feel like Arteta should play Smith Rowe a little bit more, to be honest. They're struggling for chance creation. When Smith Rowe plays, he's creating some chances at least. It's worth saying that. And then the fourth one comes with Ben White, just a free kick sent in that Ben White has a nice flick header. I mean, Arsenal do what they needed to do, but it didn't really feel like a 4-0 game. And now everything turns to next Sunday or Saturday with Man City visiting the Emirates. So everyone's going to be looking forward to that. Arsenal 15 shots and 8 on target. 6 big chances though for Arsenal, to be fair. Bournemouth only 8 shots and 1. I feel like that's a little misleading though. They could have been a lot more. Just they kind of screwed up. But a note I had here was David Raya and some stats for this game versus Ramsdale versus Brentford. A couple days ago. Raya had 60 touches, 45 passes, and 85% accuracy. Ramsdale was Brentford had 48 touches, 21 passes, and 50% accuracy. And the interesting thing here is, maybe uh, obviously, Raya is better on the ball, and Arsenal were actually using him kind of like City sometimes use Ederson as an outfield player. Bournemouth were trying to press Raya to go long and lose the ball, and instead Raya was actually kind of picking Bournemouth, the threading passes through Bournemouth's lines time and time again, and that can be a weapon if you know how to use it. And so I think that's maybe what Arteta is thinking about. But can City maybe find a weakness with Raya on crosses or maybe shots? Yesterday was an interesting game. Obviously, I'm not going to go at him for the first goal, but the second goal, Raya maybe dives a little late and his hand nearly gets there. I think Ramsdale is a little bit bigger. Maybe Ramsdale could have saved the second goal yesterday that Wahi scored versus Lens. I don't necessarily know, but Ramsdale was player of the game and made a couple really amazing saves versus Brentford. In the midweek is worth kind of saying that as well. But Odegaard had a good game. Three key passes, two big chances created. I thought he floated more and dropped sometimes to look for the ball more than necessarily trying to play a little more ahead. I thought that was good. And I thought Declan Rice had his best game. Had a few really good threaded passes. Recognized when the space was there, and he was able to carry the ball upfield. I still think Thomas Partey is a better holder for them, but at least in this game, he was good. And then the Zinchenko effect is interesting because we've now gotten a few games where Rice has gotten to play with Zinchenko, and you see where it's starting to look a little bit better. But again, so many times Zinchenko's in midfield, and I'm wondering, can a team exploit that? Can a team find a way to attack down that side? You're gonna have to have a lot of pace to do it. Um, maybe City will look at that. We basically saw what Lens do that yesterday. They found a way that when Zinchenko was a little bit out of position, they were able to get their wing back, to sprint down that side and send a couple crosses in, and that's basically what hit Arsenal yesterday. But there are some negatives here. I think they're going to need Martinelli versus City. I don't necessarily know if Trossard's going to be necessarily enough. Trossard was the one that got the game-winning goal in the Community Shield. It's worth saying that as well. But I just think I feel like they're missing when Martinelli plays, and obviously Saka hobbled off in the second half here, and to make things worse, he had to come off yesterday early on. So Teta may be screwed up by even playing Saka yesterday. So if City Arsenal might be without Saka and Martinelli for Man City. Everyone's going to focus on Rodri not being available for City. Arsenal might go into this a little empty-handed as well. And a note I have here, I think it's time for Arteta to play Miss Smith Rowe. He had a good late strike when he came on Lens, even yesterday as well. I thought he had a decent little scoring chance versus Bournemouth. If Saka can't go, the fix needs to be Reece Nelson, not necessarily Fabio Vieira. I didn't like Fabio Vieira playing further up as kind of a winger. He just doesn't have the pace. He doesn't have the physicality. I don't know if Reece Nelson is fit or ready to play against Man City, but I think you're going to have to roll the dice at least with that, or maybe you try Gabriel Jesus on one of the wing side with Nketiah. I don't really know. I think one thing that's worth saying though is Jesus wasn't really able to play versus Man City last year. Had a good finish versus Lens yesterday. It's worth kind of saying that. So maybe we see. Maybe we can finally see him kind of hurt his former side that his manager didn't necessarily think was good enough. And when is Havertz actually going to necessarily show up and work? He's given the PK in this game to get his confidence going, but he played the way he played yesterday was so weird. He's so slow in his movement. It makes me angry at times, to be honest, because you wonder why he's so lackadaisical. I didn't know this though. Apparently, he's grown 3 inches from when he played for Leverkusen, and maybe he's lost a little mobility by getting taller. I don't know, but he doesn't look. Yeah, I thought he was fleet of foot when I was kind of looking at him in those Leverkusen highlights a few years ago because he was linked to Liverpool as kind of Firmino's replacement for the longest time. And looking back, it's a good thing that didn't happen. Uh, and Declan Rice, how is if Thomas Partey is back? What is does Thomas Partey go back to right back in that kind of weird role? I hope not because I didn't feel like that was working before. What does Arteta do with Declan Rice and Partey? Does he play them both together? We'll have to see how that works out. But it looks like Thomas Partey is back training again, and if both are healthy, I actually do think Thomas Partey is the better player. But I don't know. The way it's probably not a way Arteta is looking at, but Osaka and Martinelli is going to be rough. And again, this is a team. Everyone keeps talking about Man City as like this unbeatable team. Even with Raji, they Arsenal's already beaten them. They beat them in the Community Shield. Now it was a nothing game in that one, and Trossard just won at the last minute before it went to PKs. But that is worth repeating and remembering. And with Bournemouth, uh, Bournemouth just every game is kind of the same with them. They yeah, they press well. I think they're probably one of the top 6 maybe pressing sides, in the league. They seem to, but the problem is they can't really seem to do anything after they get a turnover or when they're starting the ball, from a set play or, from a goal kick or anything like that. Their midfield is really, really poor. I think they need Tyler Adams, to be honest, and not just because I'm an American. Just in general, the midfield just doesn't work, and, maybe Tyler Adams can help solve a little bit of that. He did debut last Wednesday. It was interesting to see him not even on the bench, for this game, so I don't know if he already picked up something. Max Aaron's had a rough go in this one as well, and Tavernier and Kluivert didn't have their best games. So I was a little bit surprised we didn't see, and it wasn't like Sinisterra or Watatara did anything either. I was surprised we didn't see Semedo, considering how well he did last week versus Brighton. And goals change games, and when you concede right before halftime, that can change a game as well. And I think that kind of factored in here a little bit as well. And yeah, Bournemouth continue to be a little bit more of a I won't say hit and miss, just a little bit a mystery. I guess we can say. And then I'll move on to Aston Villa and Brighton. This game did not go how I was expecting. I was expecting maybe this to be relatively kind of an even kind of a game because I see both teams as kind of wanting to kind of play similar styles. And Villa absolutely blasted Brighton. Emery had a masterclass, and I'm going to get into why. The first goal from Ollie Watkins, and then Watkins gets a second, and then a Stupian with an own goal, and then Fati gets one to make it 3-1. You think maybe comeback's on because it was early in the second half, and then nope, Watkins gets his hat trick with the fourth, and then Jacob Ramsey and Douglas Luiz kind of tacked on a couple really late. I mean, this was a great example of how brilliant Unai Emery can be tactically as a coach. Uh, but it is worth saying here that Brighton were maybe hard done by on some of these goals, and that kind of put it out of reach. I don't want to go into a bunch of VAR and ref controversy again, but it did kind of show his head a little bit. I mean, the Brighton lineup though was a little interesting. De Zerbi has talked about how he's struggling a little bit now to manage, playing in the midweek, playing in Europe. Both these teams didn't have the best go of it in the Carabao Cup. I know Brighton lost to Chelsea, I think 1-0, and then Aston Villa apparently lost their game as well. And here we saw an 18-year-old Henselwood played with Billy Gilmore, who Billy Gilmore I think is like 5'7", and Henselwood didn't seem much bigger, and that ended up kind of really backfiring. We saw Welbeck and Ferguson played together, and then Selly Marsh and Matoma as the attackers. And then the back line was Veltman, Adam Webster, Lewis Dunk, and Estupiñán. We saw Dunk and Webster and Dunk played again, and that ended up kind of hurting Brighton as well, which I'll get to. The last time Webster has played a couple games here, it has been Brighton's biggest defeats. The West Ham game comes to mind, and then with Watkins, not much changed here. We saw Diaby, Watkins, and McGinn, Zaniolo, and then Kamara and Louise. And basically, Kamara, Louise, and McGinn really did boss Brighton around. And it was again, it was really impressive what Aston Villa did. But it got started early for Brighton. There's a chance for Estupiñán, and it forces a good Emi Martinez save. It's an amazing find by Billy Gilmore, and you were wondering, well, maybe this is going to be how Brighton are going to be able to attack by getting, attacking down the wing side or down the wings, and maybe finding a way to get sometimes Luka Digna and Matty Cash can be a little too forward minded, and you can sometimes kind of get them that way, and instead, kind of the opposite happened. So first goal with Ale Watkins, and it's the second time in a few minutes, basically, Villa attack down to Stupian's side. So they maybe saw him as a little vulnerable. And minutes before, Diaby just couldn't get a shot away. But here, Cash gets the cross off, and Cash is playing really high up in the attack. And it's brave to play this way, but it plays off here. And it's the first of many brilliant passes by John McGinn that leads to goals. And then Mm. And then Cash kind of gets the ball from again, and it's a good cross into the box, and Watkins is able to make a run, splitting Lewis Duncan Webster. Again, Webster looks like he's basically got cement for feet, and Watkins finishes the chance. And a game note I had here was Aston Villa were intentionally trying to deny Billy Gilmore the ball with Luis Diaz all over him, and Watkins was basically kind of near him too. And it seemed like what Brighton were trying to do what worked for Man United, in my opinion. They had the center backs out wide on the touchline, and Villa only had, and unlike what happened with Man United, Villa had the fullbacks covered. So this time, basically, Villa were double teaming Billy Gilmore out of the game, and they also had the fullbacks covered where Brighton didn't have the outlets like they had versus Man United. And basically, it seemed Villa were fine with Adam Webster and Dunk having the ball being out wide. They were basically saying, "You guys beat us. We're not going to let Billy Gilmore. We're not going to let the fullbacks kind of be an open outlet," and that really worked out. Brighton were really struggling with that, and again, the De Zerbi playing this 18-year-old Henselwood, it did not work out. Henselwood was Douglas Luiz and McGinn, who's never really shy to be physical in any kind of recovery. And they were struggling. They're struggling to play out of pressure, and Villa were able to turn them over and break. And so it's kind of similar to how Wolves played Man City in some respect. So here, they get the second goal. Little luck here. So, I mean, Villa turned Brighton over, then counterattack with Watkins. He cuts inside the box and then fires one low to beat Jason Steele. But it looks like Zaniolo is offsides and interfering with the keeper. And I was surprised that this wasn't looked at and reversed because he kind of is. He's standing right in line with Jason Steele, and it's unfortunate. And then there's another chance where it forces a Steele save, and then they get the third with a Stupian own goal. And here, I feel like Douglas Luiz fouls in the buildup, and that's kind of where the goal comes from. But it's also maybe not the best punch away from Steele. It's worth kind of saying that because he punched the ball back in the middle of the penalty area. Uh, and then, basically, Mr. Diaby has two cracks at it, and the second one, he kind of scuffs the second one, but it just bounces off Estupiñán to go in for an own goal. But Villa were brilliant, but these two decisions that did change the game in a big way, and I was a little bit surprised that VAR didn't have a look at this. And to me, even before like the Liverpool result, I kind of thought that's been floating in my head is sometimes VAR has been more about kind of protecting the on-field ref decision than necessarily working to get the decisions right. And when you hear again that NBC video, that comes across clear as well. They don't want to quote unquote re-ref the game. They don't want to second guess what the head ref is doing, and I think that maybe kind of factored in here as well. And then, it's 3-0. There's a big chance for Brighton to kind of get back into this. And it's a huge missed chance by Sully Marsh. I think he should score this. And he had an early miss, messing up a potential 1v1 when he lost the ball, and he should have been in 1v1 with the keeper. And he screwed up here. And then Veltman just gets the ball and he squares a header to Marsh near the goal, and Marsh heads it over the bar instead. I felt Sully Marsh had maybe his worst game. At least worst game this season, not necessarily as a player, but here I've got a note here for Villa's shape is Kamara is sometimes dropping to become a third center back, and Cash has license to go up on the wing, and so you have to respect Cash on the wing, and by Cash playing really high up, that's forcing the Stupian to mark that and play back. But another thing too is it was allowing Watkins and Diaby freedom to kind of run at the center defenders, and Watkins was basically unplayable for Villa's back line. Brighton had majority of possession, passes, everything you would expect, but the touches in the opposition box, Villa with 25, Brighton 5, and that was a factor that was showing up as well. And yeah, Aston Villa were bossing Brighton in the middle of the pitch, and then Watkins was just having fun at their back line. And we saw De Zerbi make a lot of subs to start the second half. So we saw Ansu Fati come on, Ferguson off. Ferguson and Welbeck, back-to-back games, haven't had the best go of it because we saw the same thing last week for Bournemouth. We saw Lamptey come on for Estupiñán, and then we saw Yao Pedro come on for Welbeck. I was surprised though that Henselwood stayed on, and I was surprised a little bit that we saw Sully Marsh stay on. I'm expecting maybe to see Adengra come on instead. And here, I mean, they do get the early goal with Fati, and it's a rather strange goal to be honest. Though Pedro is able to keep the ball on the byline and squares it, keeps it from going out and then squares something in. There's a little chaos, and then finally is able to tap it in. Questions of offsides, but it was checked. And then, a game note at the 58th minute mark. It seemed Brighton did have 4 more touches in and around the penalty area. It seemed like the changes had worked. It seemed like Brighton were somewhat dictating the game again, and then Watkins is able to get the fourth and kill it off. Uh, so it comes at an important time in the game where, yeah, it seemed Brighton did have a little momentum here, and it's a hat trick for Ollie Watkins, and he gets a little lucky here, but sometimes you force your luck, and it's a brilliant pass by John McGinn to find Watkins making a run, and then Watkins again just has his shot deflected, and the deflection takes it over Jason Steele. Uh, Lamptey here is fooled though. He's fooled by Diaby making a run ahead, and that leaves Watkins open out in the wing. And again, Webster and Dunk look out of shape trying to handle this attacking line from Villa, and that was showing up as well. And then the fifth goal from Ramsey, great to see him back. This doesn't really count, but it's just a little window dressing. But it's good to see Ramsey come on and get some confidence. It's a class finish. It's worth saying that as well. No one on Villa no one on Brighton closes him down, and he uses the space given to him, and he curls it past Steele from outside the penalty area. It's a nice goal, and then the 6-1 comes in like the 96th minute. Douglas Luiz, and it's another through pass by John McGinn. Worth kind of saying that as well over and over again. Watkins is in on goal and he has his shot blocked. So this time Jason still is able to stop it, but the rebound falls to Douglas Luiz, who puts it away. But it's a perfect way to end the game, in my opinion, because Adam Webster is falling down trying to mark Watkins making a run, and by falling over, that basically allows Douglas Luiz to run behind him. And once the rebound comes, Webster's on the ground, he can't get to it. The Douglas Luiz is a cleanup tap-in goal. Uh, but this was, I think it shouldn't play for them again. Brighton have a little bit of an issue there, especially Webster with Dunk. Both seem too slow. I mean, both teams, were coming off wins last week, but were taken out of the Carabao Cup in the midweek. So it seemed both teams wanted to avenge here, and Brighton did go into this with a changed lineup, and I don't know if maybe De Zerbi had Marseille on his mind. Maybe that's the reason why Hinselwood played. But enough about Brighton. Villa really were brilliant in how they set up to disrupt what Brighton want to do. And it's not easy. We haven't seen a lot of teams able to do this. They went into a plan to play without the ball, to force Brighton into mistakes by out physicaling them, and then they broke on them with pace with Watkins and Bailey, and it worked. And they also played Cash, and they played Digna really, really high up, and that forced Brighton to keep their fullbacks back as well. So they were able to kind of dictate how the game wanted to be played, and Brighton weren't able to get out of that. Another thing is they said, Lewis Dunk and Adam Webster, you guys beat us, not Bill Gilmore or anyone else, and they allowed the center backs to have the ball. But it wasn't the same thing like we saw the last couple of weeks with Man United. And the game plan was simple. Get Brighton to turn it over and then get Watkins to do what he hadn't been doing all season. Finish the chances that came his way. But Kamara, Douglas Luiz, and John McGinn did such a good job out of possession that they were able to just kind of dictate the game. And again, we haven't necessarily seen a lot of teams able to do that. And for Watkins, got the game-winning goal versus Chelsea, and that brought that, took that confidence and turned it into a hat trick this week. And he's a good player. He hasn't actually had a bad start to the season as well. He just hasn't necessarily been putting away some chances that maybe he should have. Maybe this will keep him going. Gareth Southgate was in the stands, so maybe he had a little motivation. Who knows? Aston Villa were good though. 19 shots and 9 on target. Villa were ruthless in the Brighton penalty area. They had less possession. Brighton had majority possession. Brighton had 461 passes, but they didn't have that 600 number. Brighton weren't able to dictate the game like they have in most of these. And one player to highlight is John McGinn and his role in the goals. And I'm not Arias' biggest fan but to me he's dramatically improved his on the ball since I think Emery has arrived. It's worth praising that, because I used to see him as kind of a hoof it up, smash a shot from distance, kind of be an energy guy, a guy that goes in for tackles and things like that. A physical player, and he's added a little creativity to his game. It's worth saying that, and it can't be spoken enough how brave Villa were to not turn the ball and to not turn the ball in midfield. A big reason why they were causing these issues is they had the fullbacks really high on the wings, and they had a lot of bodies forward all the time. But if Kamara and Luiz and whoever make the wrong decisions and lose the ball, you allowing Matoma and whoever to counter down you. And so they were really good at not necessarily doing that. When Aston Villa lost the ball, it was going long. It was always in safe areas. So that was showed up. That was big. And then the only negative is Diaby came off with an injury. I don't know if it was a muscle cramp or not. Uh, that really is the only downside, essentially. I mean, one thing I was thinking about is, how much different would I view this Villa team if Tyrone Mings and Brundia, was still fit and able to feature? Um, I mean, and another thing that we're saying is they've been a rock at home. Uh, it's been their away fixtures, for some reason that they've had their biggest defeats. But this was really impressive. This is the kind of Villa team that I was kind of expecting at the start of the season, and then they had that performance with Newcastle, and it was kind of easy to not necessarily look at Villa as a threat. But they get Ollie Watkins firing and making these chances. Who knows? I mean, I still think they're a little vulnerable, a little bit at the back, and again, because not having Tyrone Mings, as we saw last week versus Chelsea, they can still be got at with the high line, and I'm wondering if maybe that's what De Zerbi was thinking about by playing Ferguson and Welbeck together. Maybe he thought, the way that Chelsea were able to just run behind Villa's high line, maybe they thought the pass would be on to do that, and it just wasn't. I mean, but for Brighton, the back line didn't show up. Estupiñán, Webster, and Dunk. Uh, and they couldn't play out of pressure, either the back line or midfield. And I think Adam Webster's been a part of Brighton's 2 defeats, so I think that's showing up. But I mean, one thing I want to say is not everyone gets the better of Brighton in midfield. And it's easy to kind of forget, but I mean, this is important to think about too, is if you have a squad that's going to lose 50-50 duels, it doesn't matter how clever you can be tactically, it doesn't matter how good passing aside you can be, you're going to struggle in a 90-minute game. And just they couldn't deal with the physicality, and I think that showed up in a time that we haven't really seen that too. And it's hard to also make up playing with really slow center back pairing, and that showed up as well. And so, yeah, I just think they get to Serbi and maybe got this a little bit wrong, and this is maybe a wake up call a little bit for Brighton, unfortunately. And Hazelwood didn't necessarily work out either. Is worth kind of saying that as well. So it's not the end of the world, and we'll see what Brighton do versus Marseille. We'll see if maybe there's a changed lineup. Maybe he was resting a Dinger. Now a Dinger is actually expected to be a bigger player for them. I don't necessarily know. Fadi's come on the last couple of games and actually been a little difference maker on the bench. So maybe we'll see him get a start versus Marseille. But they have a big game versus Marseille because they lost the first game in Europa. So yeah, it's not necessarily like there's pressure on De Zerbi or anything, but a little turmoil because they also lost versus Chelsea in the League Cup. So 2 losses in a row. But Brighton is still Brighton. They'll be fine. But I'll move on to Man United and Crystal Palace. And this was another one that got us a little of an upset with Anderson having a wonderful goal. To be fair, nothing Onana can do about this one. Onana had a mistake yesterday though. But yeah, a storyline coming into this is these 2 teams played in the Carabao Cup in the midweek, and Man United just kind of thrashed them a little bit. Goals from Garnacho, Casemiro, and I think Martial. And that was a weakened Palace team. And the game that showed up was a little different. So how would both teams bounce back, from playing the same opponent just 3 days ago? And Palace was able to go into the dreaded Old Trafford dome, where Man United have only lost 2 games over the last year. 2 games to Brighton, funny enough, and now they've lost to Crystal Palace. And this is probably the one where I think the fans have started to turn on maybe on Ten Hag a little bit. I've got a buddy that's a big Man United supporter, and he wasn't really happy about this. But I've got a little of a contrarian take where I actually liked what I saw. Obviously, you're not gonna like the result, but I now see a pattern of play with Man United that I haven't seen in the past. And I think if they can stick with this going forward, especially when they get some of their guys healthy again, I think they're going to benefit. But it might take a little growing pains. But at least I finally see an identity, or at least I see something brewing a little bit here. And again, it's hard to say that now, given what happened yesterday as well. But I think my contrarian take yesterday is I think they played well enough to win that game yesterday too, kind of comfortably as well. It was 2-1 in the 70th minute, if I recall. And then Amrabat kind of gets caught on, allowing someone to get behind him on a throw in, then a square ball in. Casemiro isn't able to, allow someone to run past him. So that's how you concede the second goal. I think they only had 4 shots all game. So that's how you did that. And then Onana had the mistake to just kind of pass it right to a player, and then Casemiro went to ground, and that drew the red card. And so before that, Man United were comfortably in the game and were comfortably creating chance after chance. We saw Hoyland, doing really well yesterday as well. So I think there were some positives in the last couple of weeks, to be honest. Some positive developments, some positive changes. Now, obviously, I don't know what you can do with Onana. Struggling. He can't. He's struggling to make saves, and if he can't do what he did with his feet yesterday, because at that point, what's the point? So that's something I can't really get into. Uh, but what I'll get into later is, since Amrabat has come to the squad, you've seen a little more flexibility in the way that Amrabat and Casemiro are playing. You're seeing Dallo come into midfield now. You're seeing Amrabat and Casemiro were kind of switching in positions, and there was a lot more shape shifting in this. You saw a back three. Sometimes Casemiro was in the back three. Amrabat was sometimes in back. Sometimes you saw Amrabat in midfield. You saw Mount kind of having a little free roll to kind of do whatever he wanted in the attack. Now it hasn't really worked out yet, but it was the way that they were shifting and constantly passing the ball and moving. I thought was better. Then they weren't just relying on Bruno to just save them. Um, uh, the only thing you can maybe say is the decision making was poor, but just the way that they were able to build up and pass and keep the ball, and also the way that they were able to prevent teams running through them. You didn't see Palace do what a lot of teams have been able to do to them, and they have someone like Eze. So you would imagine Palace would be able to do that. They'd have that threat, and Man United relatively were not in danger. I mean, they give up a goal from a free kick sent in, and it's a worldy finish, but at least in the last couple of games, I've seen them kind of fix a little bit where they've been vulnerable out of possession. Now again, it's early days, and I don't necessarily know if this is just a one-off, but I think that's something to keep in mind. Now again, you're not going to like the result of it, so it's hard. It does feel a little contrarian, but I'm not trying to troll. I do think Amrabat's come in. He's not really a left back. It's worth kind of saying that as well. Soon you're going to be able to play him in midfield, play him maybe in more of his preferred position. But and he didn't have a good game yesterday, but I thought he had a decent game here. I mean, he didn't have the foul that led to the free kick, but there were some positive signs here. So I mean, here we'll go with the first chance came to Hoyland. It's a Tyreek Mitchell goal saving clearance. Worth saying that as well. It's a great feed by Rashford. He just one times the ball over to Gahi, and Hoyland is making a run behind, and Hoyland sticks out a leg, beats Johnston, and looks like he maybe has his first goal. And Rich was able to clear it away. And then at the 10th minute, Casemiro is forced to go to ground and to bring down Mateta. And it's an early yellow card. It's a bad giveaway by Amrabat. That ended up showing up because Casemiro, I think, would like to. He likes basically playing on edge, and that early yellow maybe showed up. I mean, I didn't have many chances for Palace, but there was one here maybe for Schlupp. United may be spared by a bad pass by Amrabat, but it looks like he has a chance. Schlupp has a chance for a breakaway here, but he doesn't have the pace to get behind Lindelof, and it's a nice feed by Mateta. But 21 minutes into the game, Man United have 85% of the ball, and I think there's a lot more movement here. There's movement between the back line. Sometimes you see Casemiro and Amrabat kind of rotating in the midfield or being part of the back three. You saw center backs maybe going wide, or when Onana had the ball, you had Lindelof and Varane going wide. A little bit like Brighton does. I mean, Palace was setting off them. It's worth to be said. But just viewing how I've viewed United in the past, it seemed like it would have been harder to press them in this game. But I'm just again, I could just be saying nothing. And then there was a chance for Gahi here, just kind of a free kick, and then Gahi gets a free header. He just heads it wide. Maybe this is the one a danger moment where where Man United were given a warning shine. It came from a free kick. And then they get the goal. And before the free kick, it is a sloppy giveaway, but from Dallo, it's a lazy pass, and it is immediately intercepted, kind of near the penalty area. But after that, Pellistri works to win the ball back, and then Casemiro has a sloppy pass, and then he's trying to find Hoyland, and he's running back to the ball and can't collect it. And then Palace win the ball back again. And then Mateta gets the ball and kind of turns to go past Mason Mount. But Amrabat does well to prevent Mateta from being able to advance in the penalty area. Amrabat does well here. But the ball goes backwards. And then United poach the ball again. But Casemiro has another bad pass giveaway. Ayew gets the ball. And as he's running towards the touchline or back, basically running backwards, he's clever here. And Ayew is able to draw a cheap foul by Amrabat just being too physical. And Amrabat gives away the free kick. And it's there are two or three like really lazy or bad giveaways by Man United. Is worth saying that. And that allows Palace it allowed Palace to press a little higher at this point and win the ball back. In a time when they weren't really doing that at all in any part of the game. So maybe that's worth saying as well. Maybe the reason just because Palace weren't was laying off them. Maybe that's the reason why Man United were looking better. I can't say, but it's a free kick and it's a worldy finish by Anderson. The ball bounces his way, and he has a lot to do to get this off the volley. And I can't blame Onana for this. This is a really good hit. But a couple of game notes I had here was you see Pilastri makes a really good defensive play. But it's maybe the first time you hear his name called in like 20 minutes into the game. Man United were whether or not it was because they feared Tyreek Mitchell, or maybe they just didn't fear Joel Ward. But Man United were really only attacking down the left side in that first half, and I thought Rashford was trying to trying to do too much at all on his own. He was getting the ball and either trying for the Hollywood pass or more times than not, he was just kind of leading to giveaways. And apparently, he didn't necessarily have the best game yesterday. And then there was maybe a chance for Pelestri where he found Bruno in the 40th minute, and this is inches from being really, really clever. Bruno tries a disguise through ball that to Pelestri. He times the run onside, and it's just a couple inches ahead of him where he can't really collect it. I think there was maybe a chance for Casemiro as well. He's inches from leveling it here, and it's a really difficult volley. But it's if it's on target, I think it's probably going in the corner of the net. But halftime thought. Alex was questioning Mason Mount and Bruno. I kind of do see it. They can seem redundant. But I thought there was way too much play going through Rashford and not enough maybe trying with Palestri's side. And Haaland was really struggling. Hoyland was really struggling to get touches in the first half. They weren't really able to find him much. And then Palace's only shot on goal was the goal. And so they picked their moments to maybe go forward. But we did see a little difference when Eze was able to play versus Wednesday. But Palace was still really holding on here. But another thing too that is in the second half, you really saw this. You saw they were quite good at being compact in midfield, whether it was Decore, Schlupp coming back, Eze, Will Hughes, I thought had been good. And they basically took Mason Mount and Bruno out of the game. For any way for Man United to kind of advance, they had to go down the wing side. When Man United were trying to pass the ball through the midfield to try to find Bruno and Mount, instead of either of them coming back to look for the ball, they were just kind of staying in the air, in the 30-yard area, which sometimes we see Bruno do that a lot of times. We don't always see Mason Mount do that, but he was doing that here, and it allowed Man and I were trying a lot of risky passes, and it allowed Palace to win a lot of 50-50 balls. Midfield was really, really congested. Man and I weren't able to necessarily spread that out, but here. We have a chance in the 50th minute. It's a Rashford and Mount kind of mix up, but it's a great example of how this is maybe struggling to work. Casemiro does a really good long ball, and Mount and Rashford make the same run, and they don't really know who the ball is to. Rashford gets the ball and basically runs into Mount, and it's awkward. Man United kind of lose the chance, and then there's a shot shaved by Bruno. It's a great defensive play by Pelestri to kind of pitch the ball off Tyreek Mitchell and then carries it and feeds Hoyland the ball in the box. And it's then squared back, and Mason Mount tries a shot, and it's blocked. But you got to keep possession. Where Bruno tries a shot from distance, and I think it's on goal, and it forces a decent save by Sam Johnston. And then there's a Hoyland header here in the 56th minute. It's just an ensuring corner kick. Bruno gets the ball from the sideline, whips in a good ball, and Hoyland makes a good power for a header attempt, and again forces a decent, strong save. And then Pelestri forces another corner kick by getting to the byline and trying to whip in another ball that's crossed off at the last minute. So there were like 4 or 5 corner kicks for Man United in this little window. And then we have another chance. So this is all just kind of an onslaught here. And it's another attack that comes from the right side of the field. This time it's from Dallo on the ball. And he squares something to Pelestri, who's now central. He's able to find Bruno, and then Bruno switches a ball to Rashford from the middle of the field, looking to curve something in from behind. So here you finally saw them being able to play Rashford the ball, but they were able to kind of switch where the delivery was coming from. And just before it can switch, it can reach Rashford. It actually strikes the hand of Joe Ward. My buddy Alex was adamant this was a PK. Yeah, because it hits a hand. I think this would have been really harsh because he's not even looking there. The Rashford's probably getting to this ball if it doesn't strike Joe Ward's hand. So unlucky here, as I guess you can say. Uh, I did feel like Bruno was playing deeper, so I was complaining about him not doing that in the first half. He did come back and dictate and was looking for the ball a little bit more. I think that helped them a little bit. And then in the 70th minute, there's a United chance where Mason Mount flashes a header wide, and this is a really good ball whipped in by Dallo. Dallo was a lot more advanced and a lot more. The attack was going through him and Palestri a lot more in the second half than necessarily down the left side with Rashford. And just Mount here just can't get his header on target, and Mount just isn't necessarily working out for them. Um, the interesting thing here was Garnacho. Ten Hag decided to bring Garnacho on and move Rashford to the right side. I thought that was a little surprising because I didn't feel like Palestri was having a bad game, and I didn't feel like Rashford actually did a whole lot when that change happened. But one thing that happened was Garnacho was a little bit better than Rashford at actually creating some chances, and it's a really good play. And the 84th minute is a great play by Garnacho, who just sticks a leg into the ground and sprints to get to the byline. There's no Rashford to me is holding on to the ball and he's thinking of what to do. Garnacho is just running on instinct, and that here it nearly creates a good goal. He sprints to get to the byline, and then it's his cutback that deflects off Anderson and nearly deflects off Mark Gahey to go in. This was a very close chance. But that's basically where the chances fell. And so I mean, if you're Crystal Palace, just the age old saying is it's hard to beat a team back to back twice, no matter what. And Palace didn't necessarily play the strongest team on Wednesday night, and Roy Hodgson was able to get the better of Man United here. Apparently, he has a good record at Old Trafford. Funny enough, but the way the second half went, Palace were playing. It felt like Palace playing down a man, protecting a one goal lead. Man United had 80% of the ball, but the only thing was they struggled to create anything through their blocked lines. There weren't really many gaps to exploit. Palace were doing a really good job defensively, and but that said, I did like what I saw from Man United. Obviously, the fans aren't going to be happy about that, and the fans aren't going to be happy yesterday. But the way that they were out of possession and the build up, at least to get the ball in the final third to keep the pressure on, I thought was better. Just the final third execution was off. Um, 19 shots on 4 on target. That's not great. 2 big chances for Man United, but 653 passes, 88% accuracy. That's the highest passing number I think I've seen doing Man United games. I think under Ten Hag. I don't. Amrabat Palace was sitting off them. I don't know what it was, but they were better, and I thought they were better in the midweek as well. And just Palace, the work rate of everyone, including the forward players, it's not easy to play this way when you're playing in a block like this. You've got to have your forward players to do a lot of defensive work. They don't. Sometimes they don't necessarily like doing that. But you would just watch, and the blocks. You saw basically 3 blocks of lines in a row, and the gap between the back line, midfield, and forward line was maybe 8 yards apart of each other. There really wasn't a whole lot of space here. The midfield was really compact, and they got the early goal, and they kept their shape, and they did quite good. And they also got their bodies right to get these blocks right. Sometimes you can when a shot's deflected or whatever, that can go anywhere, and for the most part, they were just kind of giving away corner kicks. And then with Man United, passing number to me is promising, and I do focus a lot on passing numbers, not necessarily just to keep the ball to keep it, but I think the more times you see usually teams that are better passing the ball, usually the teams that are in the top, higher up in the table, to be honest. But that's just kind of a thing. Um, I think Amrabat's not really a left back, and you don't really have any way to kind of attack down his side. He's not going to offer you any kind of overlap. He's just kind of protection. But him in midfield, I don't think has actually been that bad. He didn't have his best game yesterday. Is worth kind of saying that. And he did have a couple giveaways here, but I think him coming in and tucking into midfield, I think is helping them out. To be honest, Dallo is sometimes slotting into right back. It seems like the Ten Hag's kind of played him on both sides. Um, I kind of like him when he's able to bomb forward a little bit more. He's not really the best defensively. He had a little bit of a screw up yesterday, I believe, but he's also sometimes tucking into midfield. He seems to have a little bit more of a free role in possession as well, and I think that's kind of helped them out a little bit. Again, it's to me it was harder to feel or to predict how Man United were going to pass, at least in this game. Now, once they got into the final third, I could predict they were going to go look for Rashford or Bruno. So they need to kind of figure that out. But at least to get the ball advanced. They were better in this game. And only 4 shots or 4 efforts from 19, that's not great. Rashford's decision making is kind of an issue. Um, and, the Champions League game was, it makes us kind of, look a little worse than what I was expecting, though I do think there are ways you can maybe, argue that, though I don't know how you can argue Onana. Um, but I think it's one of the first games where a team didn't really play through them. And maybe that sounds like not much of a victory, but so many teams have been able to play and pass through United for fun. And I felt like they weren't a team. They finally found a way to prevent that. So I thought that was good. I think it's still a work in progress though with Mount and Bruno, or whoever's supposed to play on the right wing. I didn't feel like Balestri was poor, and I thought United created the most trouble in the second half when Garnacho came on. So I don't really know if Rashford's maybe been overplayed, maybe tired. I don't necessarily know. But his decision making is kind of being an issue. Um, and they didn't really found Rasmus any service, so you can't really go at him. And he was fantastic yesterday when they were able to get him some service with 3 great finishes. Only 2 counted, but three great finishes. Um, so just the only thing you could say is when they would get the ball in the final third, the ball wasn't moving quick enough. Maybe Rashford getting the ball and he basically stay on it, wait to try to look up and to see what he wanted to do. Uh, when you're going against a team that's really really settled and quickly, you can move the ball side to side. That's fine, but it's got to move quick. That's how you've got to find a way to make that line shift. And just weren't necessarily doing that enough. And to me, it seemed Rashford was getting the ball and he was trying to do. He was trying to think of how you could do a 1v1 take on too often to me. So there were again some positives, but some not. And obviously, Man United losing to Crystal Palace after they beat them before is not what they're going to want to hear either. Let's see where we're doing for time. Uh, that's not that bad. Okay, and then I'll move on to Newcastle and Burnley. Newcastle go on to win 2-0, first with Almiron and then Ishak with a PK. Almiron has a beautiful goal here. Maybe goal of the weekend, to be honest. And Newcastle on a flyer right now. They just beat Man City in the midweek. No Holland, but who cares? They're able to beat Man City, and they look strong here. They didn't have the best start to the league. They had a murderous schedule, is worth kind of saying that as well. Um, but they have a chance to maybe build a little momentum here. And this is the first game where I actually looked at Newcastle and I was like, this is the Newcastle I saw last season. Now, Burnley maybe played a little role into that, but I'll get into what I mean of that later on as well. And it wasn't necessarily the cleanest or the fittest Newcastle side. Botman wasn't able to go, so we saw Jamal Lascelles, I think, make his debut. Fabian Schär still saw Dan Burn, and Dan Burn had a massive miss up early in the game that could have cost them. And then the forward line was Almiron. We haven't seen Almiron in a couple of these games. He's been rested, I guess, and he was good after being rested. And then we saw Ishak get a start. I think Callum Wilson had an issue, and then Anthony Gordon. And Gordon was really good last week. Gordon didn't necessarily do a ton this week, but he was able to create the PK. And then with Burnley is still struggling without Foster, and we saw Burnley yesterday with Foster, and they were able to win. They were actually he even got a goal, so that showed up for them as well. Burnley, the same theme. There's the same theme for a lot of these teams, and the theme for Burnley is they're playing okay, but they're making individual defensive errors, and that showed up here. Early on, there's a chance in the 4th minute. And again, it's a Dan Burn slip up. Nothing else you can say about that. Koleasho, with his pace, is able to get to a loose ball, and he squares a nice pass into the box. And the shot has good power on it by Anduni, and it's hit it right at post. So it's relatively an easy save, but it's a Dan Burn disaster to start the game. And who knows? Burnley get the early goal, maybe kind of doubt settles in. But instead, Newcastle got the first goal. And what a goal this was. This is a player that we saw flying for Newcastle last season. Almiron has been actually the brunt of a little stick, I think, from Newcastle fans because of the way he started the season. And maybe he got a goal last week in that 8-0 game, and maybe that got his confidence to try something like this. Because when he's flying and he's got his confidence, they're a different team. And here it's a bad mistake by Ramsey. He thinks he has more time than he has. It's a throw-in. This starts with Burnley having a throw-in, and they pass the ball to Ramsey, and he takes too long, and Trippier does a real good job to pinch it off him. And then Almiron gets the ball, and he's got a lot to do here. He's got a couple Burnley players near him, and he decides to just kind of shift his body a little bit. And he has a worldy shot from distance that has some power, dip and curve, and it gives Trafford no chance. Um, but it's not like Burnley weren't trying to close him down. It's just this is a fantastic strike from him. This is a this is a FIFA like goal. Uh, and when Newcastle have him firing, they're a different team. And here, Ishak is played on goal. There's a decent, I think, save by Trafford. So here is a great forward ball by Bruno. So you're able to play Ishak in on goal, and he can't get the finish right. But this comes again from Trafford does a real good job to actually come out and times his dive. But it's not really the first time that Burnley's back line has struggled with teams, playing stuff over the top and getting behind their back line with a clever run, and that's what Ishak does here. And then there's a chance with another great save, and it's another really good play by Newcastle. So Ishak drops into midfield to link a play, gets it to Almiron. Almiron's on the wing, and then he plays a ball over the top to Longstaff, making like a disguised run ahead, and it's fooled Burnley. The fullback is concerned with Almiron. He doesn't. They don't. Burnley doesn't track Longstaff's run, and then Longstaff sends a really good ball into the box, and he picks out Elliot Anderson, who flies in with his head, and it's only stopped by a great save by Trafford. So again, this is what we saw from Newcastle last season, and it was led by Longstaff. Longstaff making a clever run, disguised a clever forward run, and Newcastle were able to really confuse where the runners were coming from, and Burnley did not have fun with that. And then we get the second goal, and here Burnley is still in the game at this point. They are hanging a thread. Newcastle was starting to undo them a little bit, and here it's another just poor defensive mistake. First by Al Dakhil, heading the ball backwards, and then to Anthony Gordon, just like a free header here. And then he tries to atone for that, and he brings Anthony Gordon down in the box. But this comes from Burnley. Just they have the ball, and Newcastle just press them to go long, and then from there they just I think Newcastle then win the ball and they go long, and that's where Al Dakhil has a disaster, absolute disaster. And Newcastle get the second goal, and that kind of kills the game off. And again, it's been a pretty good week for Newcastle. So the fans there get their money for that. 20 shots and 9 on target, 6 big chances for Newcastle. Again, Burnley a little bit at the heart of that, at their own doing. Burnley seem to they come in, they put some good stuff together, but again, the back line issues have been their own doing in almost every game this season, and that hasn't really changed. But it's not easy to bounce. It's weird to say, but it's not easy for teams to bounce back winning by such a high margin. And that's not just in this sport, really in this sport. You see that in the NFL like every single week. With the game when Liverpool beat Man United 7-0, they turned around and lost to like Bournemouth or Nottingham Forest like the very next week. So the schedule has been a nightmare for them to start the season. So it's starting to come into a little form now. Two good results back to back. They've got Mbappe coming to the show to I think St. James's Park. So yeah, we'll see if they can ride some momentum to stop that. But again, this to me was the first game where I saw last year's Newcastle. The link up with Almiron and Trippier. Longstaff timing his runs, confusing the opposition. Bruno orchestrating things from deep. Ishak dropping into midfield to link play. I do think Dan Burn is still an issue versus better teams, but at least in here, it's worked. And then with Burnley, too many individual mistakes just keep costing them. And Newcastle outplayed them, but 2 costly defensive errors led to both goals. Who knows if that changes the game or not? And then with Luton Town, they're able to get a much needed win, and I think they're outplayed, but they get the win thanks to a brilliant Larson strike. And they also got a brilliant through ball earlier in the game by Sanderberg, and there was a nice finish by Foster. Foster finally returned from his red card ban, so there's some positive there for Burnley and Vincent Company to have Foster back to get him immediately scoring another goal for them, and they're outplayed, I think, in the Luton Town game, and that Larson strike was beautiful. So it's because they were leading 1-0, but they were holding off to that 1-0 lead the entire game. Luton Town were able to draw it 1-1 like the 85th minute, and then like a minute later, Lawson's able to cut inside and had a beautiful goal from outside the box. So it's not the worst I guess week for Burnley. Able to get it's you can maybe say that that's a 6 pointer. That's You got one over the at the, you got one over the, maybe a relegation contender. You got one over a fellow promoted, side at their, ground. So, maybe there's something for Burnley fans to be positive about. And then I'll move on to Brentford and Nottingham Forest. And here was this is not the game I was necessarily expecting either. And Brentford haven't had the best you know go of it recently. They lost to Arsenal in the Carabao Cup, and I thought they were every bit as good as Arsenal. Just Ramsdale was maybe player of the game. He had a couple really big saves. They also gave up a really stupid goal. Just from what I remember. Uh, so it hasn't really been the most fun couple of weeks here and here. They're able to get the red card advantage, and they get the early goal. They get the first goal by Christian Norgard, kind of winning a header from a free kick, and then they're able to and then they concede a relatively it's a decent, well worked goal by Nottingham Forest, but it's never good to concede when you're playing up a man. And I think maybe the goalkeeper has some issues with Flecken to answer for as well. I mean, with Brentford, we did see a change. We saw Ayer start over Roslov. And then Nottingham Forest made a couple changes as well. We saw Dominguez get a start. So we saw no Gibbs White. Gibbs White was on the bench for I think the first time, and we saw Moreo get his debut. Maybe no more Scott McKenna, and that ended up kind of being big because Moreo had a huge goal line clearance to prevent Brentford from maybe winning this at the end. Uh, Not a lot happened in the first half, so I'll go to the second half. There's a chance here where it looks like Weiss is maybe brought down by Matt Turner, and because I think Wisa has won the ball off Turner, and Turner then kicks him to bring him down. And I have no idea how this wasn't given a PK at first viewing, and then I have no idea how far again checked it, and everything was fine. And again, I think it's more the case of everything is about protecting what the ref makes, making if protecting the on field decision that refs are making. It seems like refs are like a protected class; they all want to protect each other. But this was, I thought this was a little scandalous because this is as clear cut to me as it can be. There's no way how, yeah, I mean, Matt Turner just kicks him. He's won the ball off him. It's not like Weiss fouls Matt Turner. He just kicks the ball off him, and then yeah, Turner just brings him down, and pretty big. Weiss maybe could have had a chance to turn and empty goal. Maybe could have scored that. So I was stunned by that. But they do get a lifeline with Niakate getting his second yellow. And before this, what's funny is you see Collins and Thomas Frank barking at each other because Collins there sends a ball long to no one, but which was a problem versus Everton. But they get away with it here, and they're able to get by a foul. Niakate goes to the ground and gets his second yellow. It's the right call. Studs are high up, so it maybe could have been looked at even more if it was just his first yellow. But for it to be a second, there's no complaints there. And then they score off that. It's a good free kick, really good delivery by Jensen here, and that's kind of been a theme for Brentford. At least you start the season. Jensen has had a couple really good deliveries, and it's Norgard. I guess I'm trying to think. Did Norgard was necessarily marked, but the delivery basically beats Nottingham Forest's back line. I guess you can maybe say that, and it's a really good finish by Norgard. Uh, so he does well to just cut his header into the corner of the net. And I feel like Turner maybe dives late. Turner maybe could have saved this. But so there you go. Brentford finally get up 1-0. And then Cooper decides to make some changes. He brings off Anthony Alanga and Hudson-Odoi for Gibbs White and Toffolo. Alanga wasn't able to necessarily get behind Brentford. Brentford were doing a decent job to actually relatively prevent any kind of space behind them. Hudson-Odoi wasn't having a good go of it either. And the changes actually ended up working because both led to the goal. I mean, Toffolo has since come on, and he gets the ball in the wing. And he sends a terrific ball into the box that Dominguez then meets and kind of just floats a header past Flecken. And I thought Dominguez was one of the few players that somewhat played well last week for City. And I mean, here, I think it's hard marking by Nathan Collins. You can go at him, I think. I don't think he's had the best start to his campaign. I think they're missing Bit-Me now. But I don't think it's great by Flecken, who maybe he thinks this is going over the goal. I don't. Maybe he's late to jump. It's weird. I feel like because it's a really good header by Dominguez, and it's a good cross sent in. The pace of the cross and the spin from the header is what beats Flecken. But I feel like a goalie should be able to keep this. But maybe I'm being harsh. I don't know. But yeah, that's chaos for Brentford at that point. Because now you figure you have to go win this game. and they were able to create a couple chances, though they came late. So in the 80th minute, I've got Bremer having a 1v1, and this is an incredible defensive stop by Gibbs White. Gibbs White didn't even start this game, and he maybe basically saved the game. So, I mean, Weiss has a chance for a breakaway, and he makes the right decision to play in Bremer, making a terrific run up the middle. And the only reason this isn't a goal is because Gibbs White just has an incredible center back impression, and he's able to go to ground and stops Bremo from being able to get this shot even on target or get a shot off. The recovery and sprinting he's able to do is unreal, and I do think he saves the goal here. And then in the 97th minute, I've got a chance for Olakipe. And a note I have here is Thomas Frank needs to play this kid more. Every time he's getting late minutes, I think he's doing stuff that creates goal scoring chances. I thought he looked good for them in the summer. Obviously, that's not the same thing as an actual league, type atmosphere, but still, he's getting league minutes, and I don't think he seems like the stage is too big for him. And I don't necessarily have to start him, but give him more minutes than what he's been doing. He's been coming in and getting 5 minutes here and there. I'd like to see him get 30 minutes or so in a second half to see what he can do. I think he's doing more than what Lewis Potter is offering. To be honest, and as long as you're out without as long as you're without Kevin Schauder, why not give this kid a shot? So I mean, here and Bremer has a hard cross or a shot. I don't really know what he's doing. Looks like the ball is just going to go out of bounds, but Olakipe sprints to keep it in bounds. And then he carries the ball into the box and he does well to create a little space for himself. And he fires a shot that gets past Turner. And this is going in. And it basically bounces off a Forest defender and deflects to go away from the goal. The ball is cleared off the line by Mario. I think it actually hits him. So this is, without Mario being there, this is going in. This is going to be a game winner. And then in the 100th minute, there's a chance for Malpai. There was also like 13 minutes or whatever in extra time. That was weird. So here in Bremo squares the ball to Malpai in a crowded, hectic box, and Malpai does well here to first get the shot off, but also collect it first, and then to also get the shot off like really quickly. But it's blocked at the last minute because Forest have a lot of numbers in the area. But the ball is blocked by Bali diving in, and it strikes his arm. And his arm is by his side, I understand, but the arm is also making his body bigger by doing this. If his arm is behind his back, like they're asking teams to do more and more, this doesn't happen, in my opinion. I think it's maybe even a goal. So if the idea is to get players to defend with their hands behind their backs at all times, because you're trying to prevent any kind of these handballs, and you're seeing more and more players forced to do that, I'm kind of surprised this wasn't actually called. So a little unlucky, a little unfortunate here, maybe for Malpai and Brentford. And Malpai came on, I guess in the 80th minute or whatever. I didn't hate what he had to offer. So I mean, Brentford avoid the disaster of losing back-to-back games to maybe relegation contenders, but I think they missed an opportunity here. 18 shots and 5 on target. You had the red card advantage, so I'm not really going to go over possession and passes. That's what you expect. You're also going against Forest, a team that doesn't care about having the ball. I mean, some positives though is I liked what Maupay offered when he came on. Caused a couple danger moments with some clever touches in the box. But some negatives is they're struggling to score from away from home, and the back line I think is struggling without me. And Flecken continues to ask more questions than provide answers. And yeah, unlucky with the PK not being called. Four starters unavailable. Shada, Tony, Ben Mee, Rico Henry. So Brentford are going through a little bit of a stretch right here, but yeah, not having being able to take advantage of the man, not taking it, yeah, taking advantage of the man advantage, and something that Jeremy has been telling me for a while is he's worried how Brentford have been poor in open play, and here this is maybe where Malpai can help out because I liked that little cameo. He got into good positions in the box, shielding the ball well, collecting it well. It's not easy to collect it when someone's necessarily around you. He was finding teammates. He was being able to create a couple chances for himself. Got a shot off, collecting it and then turning with it. So I think there's at least a positive there. And then I think I said it last week. I'll say it again. If it's going to be a little bit of a transition kind of year, maybe you're just kind of struggling to see what you got before you get Tony back, or if you keep Tony, maybe you sell him in January. Why not see what the 18-year-olds have to offer in Yamaloko and Olakipe? He keeps bringing them on in the bench. He's including them on the bench. So that to me tells me that they're training well enough to get minutes. So why not give him some minutes? Every time I've seen Olakipe come on, he's done more than Lewis Potter, in my opinion, and ditto to Simon Godas. Uh, it's not I just think he offers you a little bit more on the ball. In midfield, midfield's kind of struggling to create a little bit. Everything is going long. They're not really able to find any kind of clever passes to feet. And I think maybe he could offer a little bit more. And then with Forrest, uh, you had to be happy with what you saw from Muriel. So a decent debut, and then Gibbs White put in quite a shift as a sub. But a negative, I guess, concern is a lot of these times, a lot of these teams are becoming kind of similar to me. Forest, Luton, Sheffield, Everton, and you maybe include Brentford now, where the chance creation is just coming from swinging crosses in, maybe getting lucky on a long ball. There's really not a lot of passages of play or passing patterns. Uh, and a lot of these teams are kind of set on defending without the ball, not necessarily finding a way to win it back. Now, Brentford, I guess, are different in that respect, where they do try to press to win the ball back, but teams are going over them and fancying themselves that way. So I don't know. I mean, it's the same question with the Nottingham Forest that last season. Can Cooper pick the right 11 to keep them up? But unlike last year, I do think they have genuine quality now. Both in the 11 and on the bench. I mean, the header by Dominguez is quite good, and so is Lacrosse. So they have some quality now. And again, Moriel is definitely a better defender than they had with Joe Worrell or in just one game. I feel like I can say that. And then Scott McKenna. So, and then I'll move on to speaking of Everton and Luton Town. I'll move on to Eden and Luton Town. And Luton Town get one over Everton, and a bit of a shocker, to be honest, because not necessarily Luton beating Everton. Uh, I was expecting if there'd be a team that would actually be okay at defending Luton Town on these kind of crosses, on these set plays, it would be Everton, with Tarkowski. And no, Luton Town actually beat them on two set pieces. And then Calvert-Lewin gets one back for Everton, but it wasn't necessarily enough. And yeah, I'll get in some thoughts into Everton. But here, you get started with Dwight McNeil having a shot. It's outside the box. Outside the box, he just kind of takes a chance on a volley, just barely kind of misses it. But then Luton had a majority of chances. So here, Locklear has a header from a corner kick. Um, it's an early warning sign for Everton here. Locklear just wins a free header in the from a corner kick, and it just heads it over the bar. And then Carlton Morris has a header also from a corner kick, and a strike two for early warnings. Morris times his jump well, and his header just kind of deflects off an Everton body, and otherwise I think it's maybe a goal bound, but it doesn't matter anyway because on the very next play, also a corner kick, Locklear scores, and it's right after Carlton Morris, basically nearly scored, and it's another really good delivery sent in by Doughty. Corner kick, Morris wins the ball, it banks off the woodwork, and then Locklear slides to deflect the ball into the net before it's cleared away by Ashley Young. Everton kind of beaten at the own game. I think that's kind of funny. But another thing I said last week is I questioned why teams weren't putting more players on the post to kind of defend these corner kicks. And here, Everton did that. Everton had Young on the back post, and it still didn't matter because the team's able to score. Not because Ashley Young wasn't able to necessarily clear the ball fast enough, and it's possible that's the reason why Morris and Locklear and others were winning these headers in the previous plays because Luton had more players to challenge those balls in the air. Because that's what happens when you have a player on the back post. You're taking away a potential defender. So egg on my face. That didn't necessarily work out when I've been wondering about that. And then they get the second goal with a free kick, and it's just a ball whipped in. No one's marking Morris. I think that's kind of weird. And he has a great first time finish to score in the corner of the net. And just Linko gets caught. He gets caught worrying about players maybe in front of him, and he completely loses Carlton Morris, making a run behind him. And it's also a cheap free kick, I think, for Everton to give up. They can't really keep control of the ball, and everything is a 50-50. Onana goes to the ground and tries to win it back and catches Luton Town player from behind. There's just no control here by Everton. And then we have a chance for Dwight McNeil to have a cross to Garner. It's a really good ball sent in by McNeil, and Garner meets it, but, heads it to the crossbar instead. It's a shame because I think Garner doesn't really do anything wrong here, and it's unlucky, but Luton are quite fortunate here because this was good play, by Everton, and then, they do get the goal, with Calvert-Lewin, and, uh, it's just kind of a ball just played into the box. It's headed away, but the rebound falls to James Garner, and then Garner floats in a decent ball into the box and picks out Onana making a run, and Decore then gets the rebound, and he's stopped, but the ball is still loose, and Calvert-Lewin kinda is able to tap it in. There's questions that Calvert-Lewin was offsides, but, they took, like, 5 minutes, they couldn't figure it out, so that to me is fine. And then, maybe a chance for Luton Town where they did score, but it's offsides. Again, Doughty. Doughty is kind of their, Dwight McNeil or James Garner kind of player. He has a really good delivery into the box, and this ball is just sent to the back post, and then Luton's Jacob Brown wins that header and squares it across goal where Morris finishes it, and they rule Brown is offside. And then a couple chances here when Beto came on, and Dyche is playing Beto and Calvert-Lewin together. I like that. I've been wondering maybe if we'd see that because I was wondering if we would see that versus Brentford, and we didn't. It worked here. McNeil sends the ball into the box. Jack Harrison meets the ball, squares it towards Beto, and Beto meets it with his head, and he just heads it over the bar. Uh, it was crossing hope though from both teams all game, and here that's the reason why play with two towers. Why not? It just didn't work out here, and then Beto had another chance and went over the bar where another good ball sent in by Garner, and Beto wins the header, just heads it over the bar. Uh, but I was a little bit surprised though here. Figured a team could handle defending set pieces. It would be Everton, and that's how they lose here. I mean, the game featured a lot of chances, but it was a lot of the chance creation came from hopeful crosses into packed boxes. Looking for guys to head stuff in, maybe get a second ball in there. There wasn't really an ability to play anything creative from either side. I mean, there were a lot of shots. Everton 5 shots, 5 on target. Luton Town with 9 shots and 2 on target. 6 big chances for Everton and 3 for Luton Town. Everton did have more passes, and Luton Town with only 146. That's kind of been a theme for them. 50% accuracy. Luton do not care about passing the ball. Um, but here, performance doesn't matter. Just win, baby, win. And I think it's good for Carlton Morris to gotta get his first open play goal. Kind of. I mean, it comes off a set piece, but at least it's not from a PK or anything. Uh, and he's started to at least play well for them. If they're gonna have a prayer, they're gonna need him to really kind of carry them. To be honest, so that's good to see. And then they did lose yesterday, but I actually think they lost to a fantastic strike. But I thought they were actually somewhat dominate in that game versus Burnley, at least in the second half. And again, Morris looked dangerous on corners, and you got to Adebayo to score you a good goal coming off the bench. I think that's his first goal for this season. And Burnley struggled to keep the ball versus Luton. That's something that Burnley have actually been able to keep the ball versus a lot of good teams. So there's reasons for hope, at least in that respect. Still, uh, only hope. I'm not going to say anything other. And then with Everton, the positive thing I think is you did see Beto and Calvert-Lewin play together, so you saw Dash change it up a little bit. It didn't work out, but it was a good wrinkle to see. It was good to see Jack Harrison get some minutes. You almost forget that he is on the team. But yeah, the negative is kind of the same thing. You don't really see any patterns of play with which Dash's side. And again, one step forward last week, beating Brentford at Brentford, and then 2 steps back, losing this game at your home ground. And again, they have new ownership. I think that's on the way. Graham Potter, I think, is right there. So I don't know if that is on the cards. Maybe Potter's looking for something else. But I do think they're going to struggle with Dyche. I'm not necessarily saying, Dyche can make them competitive and compact and all that stuff. But they're going to struggle if they can't keep up to the ball and everything's just kind of hopeful. It's hard to be consistent that way. But anyways, and then I'll move on to West Ham and Sheffield. West Ham do go on to beat Sheffield 2-0, a little bit better than last week for Sheffield, where they lost 8-0. How would they rebound? They rebounded a little bit better, not necessarily. West Ham continued to kind of field the same 11, and with Sheffield, they were able to get a McBurnley back, so that was good for them. But I mean, early moments for West Ham. So you had Boeing with kind of a free cross into the 6-yard area where James McAtee got bullied here, and then Suchek just can't get the shot down. But it's an early morning shine, and then there's a good moment off a corner. Forces a couple early saves. So I didn't think it was the best start for Sheffield. And then the first goal with Bowen, and something I think I've noticed is the last couple of games when James McAtee has come into the squad, I think they've been worse out of possession. So we saw Sheffield versus Man City, and they weren't really cut open. I mean, Man City had a lot of chances, but a lot of chances that came to kind of Holland's way, and it was a lot of bully ball. or a lot of crosses in to like a box. They're really cut open like this way. But here, they're just the ball watching. And so here, Sioux Fall simply makes a run past McAtee. I think it's his guy. And from there, Sioux Fall has a free cross into the box where he picks up Bowen. Bowen is completely unmarked here, and he has a good first time finish. But it is great. It's great play by West Ham. Sioux Fall passes it to Alvarez. Alvarez quickly one times it to Bowen. Bowen then quickly plays it to Souček, who plays it to Sioux Fall, making a run down the wing. But why does Bowen pass it to Souček? He spins around him and makes a good run into the box. And this is really good rep by West Ham here, but it's also ball watching by Sheffield. Jared Bowen spins around, spins off Souček, no one bothers to mark him either. So you didn't mark Sioux Fall making that run, continuing to run, overlap run, and you didn't mark Bowen, and you were hurt there. And then here was another mistake. Another goal where they're their own worst enemy. And that's kind of been a theme in some of these games where they have the ball with the keeper and pass it to the center back, and West Ham weren't really pressing, but there's a decent pass to find Hammer, and Hammer just widely one times this to no one, and passes the ball away in their own end, and then just one pass later, Antonio gets the ball in the top of the Sheffield box, and then he picks out Souček making a run in front of him, and Souček has a nice finish. And then there's a chance for McBurnley. A shot goes wide, but it's a decent chance here where it's a good find by Hammer. He's able to play McBurnley in behind, but he drags the shot wide. And then there's maybe a chance for in the 45th minute or 54th minute for Sheffield, where Areola made a save on the corner kick, but that was really it. 16 shots or 16 attempts for Sheffield, but only 2 on target. They at least they only conceded 2 in this game. West Ham were good though. 20 shots, 9 on target, 5 big chances for them. They did what they needed to do essentially. XG was 2. They scored 2. Bowen keeps having a flyer start. For them, and we're seeing Bowen now in a couple of these games. He's not just playing on the wing side. Moyes is allowing him to play a little bit more in the middle, and that's basically where one of the goals comes from. And then with Sheffield, if you have a team that isn't going to track runners or is going to give the ball away cheaply, I don't really know what a manager can do to fix that. The first goal is great play by West Ham, but again, it comes from McAtee not really following Sioux Fall and Luke Thomas not marking Jared Bowen. And then the second goal is bad by Hammer. No one recognizes the mark Souček. So a bit of your own doing. And then I'll finish with Chelsea and Fulham. And Chelsea could go on to win 2-0. There's a little more hype or optimism about Chelsea. I have been optimistic a little bit in the past too. But the way NBC was saying Chelsea is back, I'm going to hold the brakes on that because Chelsea has finally scored 2 goals in the game. That's good. They did start off well, but I didn't like what I saw in the second half, which I'll get to. And they got a big win over Brighton, so that's worth saying. Jackson scored. That was good for them there. Jackson wasn't able to play this game because he was yellow carded out. But maybe the best news is Carly Chukwuemeka is back in training. He's one of their more creative players that they've been missing. So that could help them because they've struggled there. But this lineup was weird. Now, struggled having to play without Marlon Gusto having that red. So Cucurella was basically the right back. It was a different lineup than what I was expecting. I thought maybe we'd see Colwell back at center back. No, we saw Cucurella at right back. Colwell still at left back. That worked out though. Colwell had a good assist. We saw Sterling Weston on the bench, and then Palmer got a start, so that was good to see. And then we saw Broja. Broja got a start because Jackson had the yellow carded accumulation issue, and Broja scored I don't necessarily he scored a decent goal. He had a decent game. And, I guess he created the goal. The goal was really caused by Tim Ream, which we'll get to. And Broja, I think, ended up having to go off injured, so that was maybe the one negative. And then with Fulham continued to kind of struggle. It seems like they're trying different formations. They're trying to figure out how to play without Mitrovic. And, the Jimenez isn't necessarily working out. The midfield to me isn't working out with Paulinho, Reed, and Pereira. Now, I know they did that last season, but the way they had Mitrovic was doing some different things that Jimenez was offering last season as well. And another thing, too, is that center back partnership of Diop and Ream has been just a nightmare to start the season as well. Last year, we saw Tosin played instead, I thought, and it just hasn't necessarily worked out either. The positive is, I guess, Castagna and Robinson aren't necessarily the worst fullbacks. So that's decent. But yeah, Fulham were struggling. But they did play better in the second half, which I'll get to. So here, Chelsea got off to a really good start. There's an early chance for Broja, just a shot over the bar, and it's not really the best for confidence, but at least he created the chance. He got near the box and just shot over the bar. And then Enzo was nearly played a fantastic ball by Cole Palmer. Cole Palmer had a good game, and then we have a chance for Mudryk in the 10th minute, where it's a great turn and pass by Cole Palmer. He finds Enzo all alone in the middle of the field, and then Enzo carries it kind of the Fulham box, and then finds Mudryk, and then Mudryk hits a shot over the bar. But then Mudryk makes amends, and this is a fantastic goal from Mudryk, so that's at least positive. And he's been playing pretty good for the last couple of weeks. So he had a chance earlier, didn't made a meal of it, but here he buried it. Colwell gets the ball on the wing, playing a little higher up as a fullback, and he sends a terrific ball over the top that finds goes over everyone in the Fulham back line. And Mudryk has a great touch to bring it down. This doesn't happen without that first touch, and then is able to finish the chance. So good for Mudryk. And I think maybe the one negative as well is he wasn't able to finish the game. So we'll have to follow that development as well. But and then they quickly got a second one with Broja. And here Tim Ream makes two mess ups. First, he has a bad pass. He's trying to basically Tim Ream has the ball nicked off him by he's trying to trying to make a pass, and Cole Palmer reads it, and basically he passes the ball to Cole Palmer, and then Cole Palmer plays in Broja, and from there Tim Ream is trying to nick the ball off Broja, and instead basically deflects the ball into his own net by Leno. I think he wins the ball and it deflects off Broja to bounce into the net. And he hasn't had the best go of it to start this season. But it is great play by Cole Palmer here. Forced a turnover and then had a nice slip pass for the goal. The game started off pretty bright for Chelsea, but it got cagey after that. And the 41st minute to go, and Fulham haven't really been able to get Jimenez involved in the game. I had a note that Iwobi was on the bench. I mean, the halftime thoughts was we're seeing a little change here though from Pochettino. So we saw a little rotation between Enzo, Caicedo, and Gallagher here. So you saw all three kind of take turns playing deep and advance. Enzo and Gallagher in particular. I think Chelsea were also man marking Fulham. So you saw Gallagher basically on Polina. So that's sometimes where you saw, maybe that's the reason why they were rotating a little bit. But I didn't feel like Chelsea had been great as far as chance creation. And they've stifled Fulham. They've prevented them from being able to create anything themselves. And they haven't turned it over. So that was good. But I thought it was more on Fulham just being poor. I mean, Paulinho had a Roman role, and he was having to go in out wide because too often it was too compact. Caicedo was having a really good game, and there wasn't really anything there. Gallagher actually had a really good game without the ball because you don't really remember Paulinho being able to be that influential as well. So Chelsea did a good job to take Fulham's two best players out of the game. But I thought a note I had was I thought maybe Iwobi would be a better player to play over maybe Reed. And instead he came on for Harry Wilson, which I was kind of surprised by. So they played Iwobi up a little bit higher, but it worked out because Fulham, I thought, kind of took control in the second half. So there's a cross by Robinson, and Iwobi just kind of to the back post and he fluffs it. And then in the 15th minute, Fulham have been lively since Iwobi and Vinicius have come on. Down 2 goals, though. So I was surprised why they didn't try Vinicius and maybe Jimenez together. There's a chance where Vinicius heads the ball over the bar. There's maybe a chance for Chelsea to make the game cleaner than it was in the 61st minute with Maatsen. He hits the post. It's a good play by Broja in the beginning. So, Maatsen then strikes the post, and then Enzo follow up, and it's a good save by Leno. But Broja has to go off after this, and that kind of killed the game because they brought Sterling on, and Sterling didn't really have anything to offer in the middle. And then Chelsea had to kind of hang on a little bit here. There's a chance for Lukic. Shot from close range, and it was a decent save by Sanchez. But it's hit right at him. But it's also a great pick out by Tom Carney. Feeding a runner in. Tom Carney came on in the second half, and he was quite good. So it was a weird game because the way NBC was praising Chelsea, I was surprised by that. Chelsea had 11 shots and only 4 on target. Fulham had 10 shots and 3 on target, and the XG was about 1 apiece. 4 big chances for Chelsea, but I was more impressed with Chelsea last week with Villa in their loss than necessarily their win here. Fulham outpassed them 493, 88% to Chelsea's 395, 85%. Fulham outpossessed them. Now, again, Chelsea are defending a 2-goal lead, so that kind of played a role into that. But the way the Chelsea were actually somewhat on the back foot in the entire second half, I was surprised. I thought Chelsea were going to really just take control and just kind of kill the game. Chelsea have been one of the best passing teams in the league, and just Fulham, the opposite happened. I was shocked by that. I don't really know how much has changed, but yeah, they weren't really on it. And it doesn't really matter because they get the 3 points, and at an important time because they've got a rough stretch ahead. I think they have Burnley, and then it might be Arsenal after that, and then it's Man City, Spurs, Newcastle. It's like all of them that are in the top 8, all in a row till like December. So it's big for them to at least get that. But and the midfield controlled the game, so that's a positive. Enzo and Casado, in particular, they didn't give the ball away ever. Gallagher did a good job on Polina, took him out of the game, and Casado marked Polina or Pereira out of the game. And Mudryk got his first goal. It's a really good goal. You have to I guess follow the injury to Mudryk and Broja. And I thought Casado was looking a little rough towards the end, but yeah, there's a lot of topic talk that says Chelsea's XG stats suggest they should be third in the table or higher. I buy the argument they should be higher than 11th, but it's hard because where they've struggled is it's where they haven't been able to score, and this game didn't necessarily suggest they fixed that. I mean, Broja lasted a chance over the bar. I mean, Tim Ream deflects one off him for his goal, and then Mudryk lashed one before he scored his goal. So it took a while for Chelsea, and after that, and it's not like Chelsea really created a whole lot after that. Matson hit one on the bar. I do feel like they could use Cole Palmer a little bit better. He was kind of a deeper kind of playmaker here. I feel like he could actually be maybe a goal threat, like we saw for him for City. Uh, and it was a weird second half. They had the 2-goal lead, and Fulham controlled the tempo. And I thought Chelsea were sloppy in possession, and it was just strange to see NBC really hype them up. So, and I still think they still have a Thiago Silva issue and Colwell at left back issue. So again, Chelsea get Reece James back. That'll fix their back line a lot. That's worth saying as well. And maybe when they get Kali Chukwuemeka, maybe they can get they get Jackson back for after this. And Jackson did score a decent goal to beat Brighton. We'll have to follow how Broja is going to be. There's some talk online that Broja is a better player to play than Jackson. There could be. I didn't think Broja had a bad game, and Broja, I liked him when he was at Southampton. I remember saying things about that. He didn't necessarily have a lot of goals, but the way there was one particular performance for City where he was really impressive. He had a lot of pace, has good hold up play. There've been a few times where Jackson has gotten the ball and hasn't really had the best touch. He's kind of heavy touch into the box and has kind of lost his chance. Broja doesn't really have that problem. Broja has a really good touch on him, at least from what I've seen. And maybe Broja can finish more than Jackson. I mean, that's probably a good problem for Chelsea to have. But again, it's crazy how you're relying on Chelsea and Nicola Jackson on a squad that's been spent like so much money on. But I don't have to go through that rant again. And then with Fulham, they won the second half. I guess you could maybe say that. They outpassed Chelsea, and Chelsea defending that lead, but they still had them on the back foot. But for the most part, they've been poor. They've been poor to start the season. Unlucky to concede those 2 goals, and they buckled down after that. So that's positive. I think Tom Corney and Iwobi should play more, start more. They offer them a little bit more. They've been so poor on the ball offensively, and you've lost. It's not Jimenez's fault. I think he had something like 12 touches for the first half, but it's not working. They were able to get away with what Mitrovic was doing for them, and doing multiple roles, and they're missing that. And again, Tim Ream mistake again, and it's not the first time this season. I don't want to make an excuse, but I do think that partnership isn't working with Diop, and they do have Calvin Bassey, so. Can you? Is there time to maybe rethink that? But I do think they're set to struggle, unfortunately, and they do have 2 decent fullbacks in my opinion. So, like I said, why not send more delivery? And I get sometimes you don't want to just aimlessly whip a ball in because sometimes that can lead to a turnover and transition. But there wasn't a whole lot for Vinicius or Jimenez to feed off. And I guess you could say they looked better after the changes, but and Tom Corney and Iwobi asked more questions, in my opinion, but it wasn't enough still. And so, yeah, there's still some issues. And then that'll be it. That'll be it for this week. and we'll be back this time next week as well. Don't forget if you've gone this far in the show, again, if in the description, I'll have it hyperlinked where I'll only go over, or you'll be able to find out your specific game if you want that. I feel like that's a little bit better. But anyways, thanks you for tuning in, and that's it for this week in the for the show, and for that said, you stay squatting and stop recording.